OTB AM. With Gillette, your most supported our frontline workers this Movember.
Hello, very good morning to you. Welcome along to OTB AM. It's Ger Eoin and Owen Sheehan with you all the way through until 10 a.m. this morning. Owen, good morning. How are you?
Very well. Good morning.
So lots to talk about from last night, lots to talk about from tonight as well. A very busy programme in that regard. Were there some moments during the match yesterday where you thought, ooh, Ireland might be able to do something here?
Definitely when you saw the scores coming in from Montenegro against Ukraine, you thought that something miraculous might have happened. And unfortunately, once Montenegro went down to 10 players, that was it. Hopes dashed. I think it was Extra Time who actually had the first score, and they had a little tab on Twitter with Montenegro-Ukraine, which unfortunately I couldn't find a legal or an illegal stream of, so you were just relying on Twitter all afternoon. But no, once you saw that they were coming down to 10 players, and they... You just knew that the dream was then shattered, because there was no hope that
they had a good half hour with down to 10 where they managed to keep the score at 1-1, and you were thinking maybe Ukraine are actually, choking, like the way so many teams do at the last minute. And then we got it back to 2-1. It was like, oh, hang on a second here. No. I mean, Germany were the better team last night and deserved to win. And if we had got anything from that game, it would have been one of those great sporting travesties that actually are very important in the foundational narrative of any country. But I don't know, like, it's the stuff that we've lost by not qualifying for a Euros in England and by not qualifying for the next Euros in the men's competition is like a generational level of importance and opportunity blown. And I don't know how sick the entire team must be, because they realise how close they were. Like, it's a missed penalty and a botched own goal, and you're in the playoffs at least. And from the playoffs, by the time the playoffs are rolling round, it looks like we're going to have fans in stadiums, and who knows what happens then. So, Vera Pauw tearful last night, and it sounded like she wanted to stay on.
Definitely. This isn't somebody who looked like she didn't care. It really did have to look at somebody who wanted to stay on and see this thing through, and the confidence that you heard from her saying that we're going to be there at the 2023 World Cup. That's what you want to hear from your manager. And I think the FAI need to be doing everything to ensure that she stays, to try and persuade her to stay. It seems from listening to what she's saying that she has been given everything she needs, really, or so far anyway, everything she needs to try and take this team onto a new level. It's encouraging to hear that she believes that the team are improving every single time they come together. That's the biggest frustration for me, is that they've improved to a point where they are the second best team in that group quite easily, actually. There's no way that Ukraine are actually a better team than them, which makes it all the more frustrating. You compare Ireland's results against Germany to Ukraine's results against Germany. Ukraine got beaten 8-0 and then beaten 8-0 again. Ireland lost 3-0 to Germany, then actually scored a goal against Germany in the second game. And the chasm between Ireland and Germany is obviously quite big, but the chasm between Ukraine and Germany is gargantuan. And like, Ukraine are the sort of team that could get eaten alive in European Championships, whereas Ireland look like they're going in a direction where they can get to a point where they can do what, say, the men's team did in 2015, which is actually, a performer giant killing. And that's probably the next step. And then after that, it's actually get to a point where they could routinely trouble the Giants. I love that idea, though. Just to come back to that, Vera Pauw was saying we will be there for the 2023 World Cup. And I think sometimes there's a little bit too much responsibility placed on these players as ambassadors, but that's what they are. There's no getting away from that fact for a growing game that they are. And if they actually manage to qualify for that World Cup, just imagine the explosion in that game that it will do for everyone here around the country, because last year World Cup without Ireland had a big enough impact.
Yeah, the only thing is it's in New Zealand and Australia, I think, so the timing isn't great, whereas the games in England were games that people and families might have gone to, and look, who knows, and they would have had a training camp here, and there would have been sessions with the players and all that kind of stuff, and all those games would have been on telly as well. So look, it is a massive opportunity lost, and I can see why they were also heartbroken afterwards. We'll talk about that a little bit later on the show too. There was, as the full time approached, team news started to filter through from the Liverpool game, and that Alisson was out. And this isn't a dead rubber end of the Champions League, Liverpool already qualified game. This is Ajax coming to Anfield to try and upset things, and Liverpool, after their dodgy run of form just recently, needing to put in performance. And the news is that Kelleher starts in goals. And it's like, right, this is the deep end. This is absolutely important. They need 3 points. They need a good performance from him. And they got it. He played really well.
Very well. This is a hugely encouraging moment for Liverpool fans, first of all, because they've got a keeper who looks to be better than Adrian. And obviously very encouraging from an Irish perspective as well. Goalkeeper is not a problem position for Ireland at the moment, but Darren Randall's not going to last forever. We're also changing our style of play where a footballing goalkeeper might be the way Stephen Kenny goes in the next couple of years, and having that option at Quinn Kelleher is just unbelievable. Like, I saw a couple of people saying that it's not great that he's now going to be backup keeper and there's no way Klopp is going to let him go. He needed to go out on loan. But as far as injury-prone goalkeepers go, Alisson is right up there. There is going to be more game time for Quinn Kelleher, you suspect, if he has really pushed Adrian out. I can't see Adrian getting back in ahead of Quinn Kelleher next time duty calls. You saw the reaction from Jurgen Klopp at the end of the game last night. He's a much better footballer than Adrian, and we saw last night he's bloody good with his hands as well. Like, it's fantastic just to have a hopeful story in Irish football after the year that we've had. Everything just seems so downtrodden, no luck whatsoever.
I know.
There's just been a lack of luck in every single department. A good goalkeeping performance. You sometimes need a little bit of luck. You sometimes need to not get beaten by a worldie of a strike in your Champions League debut. You sometimes need to not have an unstoppable goal go past you. And that's what he had last night. But the ones that were stoppable, of course, he did brilliantly to actually do his job on the night, and he looked assured, and it was brilliant. It was just a really, really happy moment. And you know what? All of a sudden, we all love Cork, and we're thankful for Cork for producing this guy, because Quinn Kelleher's basically, and the first Irishman to play in the Champions League in 4 years. It's a weird sensation, actually. Midweek, biggest competition in world football, actually having a little bit of Irish interest. These things we're not used to anymore.
Yeah, no, totally. At the same time, given everything that's happened in 2020, every time the ball was passed back to him, I was like, ooh, what's going to happen now? How can 2020 shit on us in any way? Is that possible? It's like, actually, it hasn't. It's okay. It's all good. And they obviously win that game after a mistake from the Ajax goalkeeper, who up until that point I thought was very impressive. In terms of footballing ability, that is somebody who backs himself and really good distributor of the ball as well. So I was kind of thinking, is this one of those situations where you put yourself in the shop window properly and end up being signed next season? But Andrea, not after the mistake that he made, letting the ball go, I don't think, I don't know. Curtis Jones' finish was obviously excellent. And then the cross was from an 18-year-old Welsh right back. And you're like, we could do with a few of those. A few 18-year-olds playing for one of the English teams in the Champions League, dropping dimes of crosses that are in that corridor of uncertainty. It's great that we have a goalkeeper, because that's somebody who we can stick in goals now for the next 20 years and not worry about. But I could do with a few outfield players too.
Well, not a right back, ideally. In any position that's not right back, basically.
If Nico Williams was Irish, he'd play centre mid. That's what you'd do. You'd stick him straight in centre mid.
Well, the thing with Nico Williams is that there's been he's got a lot of stick over the last couple of weeks since Trent Alexander-Arnold's injury. His name has been trending on social media for the last couple of games, actually, and the reviews have not been good. And obviously that'll do the world of good for his confidence last night that he's actually managed to get that assist. But the one almost blemish that we saw from Quinn Kelleher last night was a very similar cross that almost went over his head and that a player almost got to on the back post for Ajax. It was just that Quinn Kelleher was probably 5 yards closer to the end line than Onana was in that situation, so he managed to get away with it. It just seemed like a very similar kind of situation that, again, you need these little bits of luck in your Champions League debut. Like, he's clearly a top-class goalkeeper, Quinn Kelleher, and like, he deserved the rub of the green on that front. Like, it was just a really, really good performance and really encouraging. And like, I'm sure for someone like Nico Williams as well, that can't hurt to actually put in that sort of ball and get that little bit of fortune that maybe he deserved after a tough couple of weeks.
Yeah, and I'm no doubt coming in, trying to replace Trent is unbelievably difficult, because people are holding you to the standards of one of the best players in his position at the moment in the world, and you're never going to fulfil that. You're right about Kelleher getting a few breaks, though, because the one that he pans back out goes to just the right angle for the Ajax player to have somebody taking the angle away from them, and so therefore he hits it wide, whereas, sometimes somebody's running in opposite you and they just head the opposite direction, and you're like, well, what can I do about that? But look, you take the breaks wherever they're coming. That's Caoimhín Kelleher's performance last night. We'll talk about the Champions League. We'd love to hear from you. 087 180 180 is the WhatsApp number. You can get in touch with us this morning. People have been in touch too to ask us to talk about the situation with regards to underage sport, and in the wash of the level 3 plus that we're at the moment, it's still only elite underage sports people who can play. So in soccer, that means if you're part of the League of Ireland, you can play, but the rest of the country can't actually play soccer matches underage, even though elite sports people can underage. And I don't know, maybe we're getting to a point where we can be a bit more sophisticated about these levels, where actually underage sports matches could go ahead.
You definitely would have thought so. The one concern that I would have is that there just doesn't seem to be much of a conversation around this, unless I've missed a big story here where people are really trying to get their act together in terms of getting people back on the pitch or getting fans back into stadiums, I think, as well as another thing that plays into this. That it just feels that sport has been left behind a little bit over the last few weeks. Of course, sport is never going to be the most important thing in a year like 2020. But in terms of reopening the country, in terms of getting people back to normal, I would have thought it's a fairly important part of how people actually operate on a day-to-day basis. Like, remember, underage sport used to be a thing that people used to enjoy at the weekends with their kids. Like, that was a part of normal life. Getting back to that place should be a priority for this government. It should be a priority for everybody. It is a part of the national well-being. It just seems that there is a slowness to get back to anything that doesn't resemble elite sport behind closed doors.
Yeah.
We're kind of at a stage where it feels like, right, you've got your championship, and it always is framed around the GAA championship. You've got your championship, it's happening behind closed doors. Take what you get. Sporting family, take what you get. And it just feels that there's a lack of effort around every other element of sport. Yeah,
well, some my mates would be involved in underage soccer have been in touch saying they've been allowed to train the whole way through in groups of less than 15 at level 5, and then at level 3 nothing actually changes. So it's like, well, these levels don't really mean anything to you once we hit a certain tipping point. And then obviously he goes on to point out, well, they're spending 6 and 7 hours a day together in classrooms, and so far the level from schools seems to be pretty low, unless there's a massive cover-up going on, which I don't think there is. And you'd think that maybe underage matches should be allowed, get that cycle back up and running, get those people thinking about those games. I know people are going to talk about the travel to and from, but there must be some way of thinking about a solution to that, as opposed to just saying, no, you can't do it. Right, what are we at? 7:43 this morning. I'll tell you what's coming up. Daniel Harris in 2 minutes. Sports pages from 8:05. Aidan Taggy Fogarty is going to talk to us about the inside line of Waterford in particular, and how they might give Waterford a chance of All-Ireland glory. John Duggan at 8:35. Ruth Fahy talking about Ireland's heartbreak at 8:45. Gaelic football with Kevin Walsh and Mickey Quinn, and then Kevin Doyle talking about concussion from 9:30. Phil Egan is with us. Phil, where are we starting?
We're going to start with Caoimhín Kelleher. Quite the night for the Cork goalkeeper. Kept a clean sheet on his European debut for Liverpool, who qualified for the last 16 of the Champions League with a 1-0 win at home to Ajax. Curtis Jones scored the only goal of the game. So Kelleher came in for the injured Allison. Allison has a tight hamstring. Going to miss the Wolves game this weekend as well. So it would appear Kelleher is in line to start his first Premier League game as well on Sunday night at Anfield. Manchester City guaranteed top spot in Group C with the goalless draw away to Porto. The top two in Group H meet at Old Trafford tonight. It's Manchester United against PSG. United know if they avoid defeat against PSG, who they've already beaten in the group, then they'll go through. Chelsea are already into the last 16, but they're away to Sevilla in Group E. Those games all kick off at 8 o'clock. An emotional Vera Pauw said last night she'll wait to hear from the FAI before deciding on her future. The Republic of Ireland lost 3-1 to Germany at Tallaght Stadium, ending their chances of a playoff spot for Euro 2022. They finished third in the group. Ukraine secured second place with a 2-1 win at home to Montenegro. Northern Ireland's hopes of qualifying for a first major women's tournament still very much alive, though. Kenny Shields' side beat the Faroe Islands 5-1, so they're into the playoffs. 6 football games across the EFL will welcome fans back to the stadiums for the first time tonight since the beginning of the initial coronavirus lockdown in the UK. Up to 2,000 people are allowed to attend events in Tier 2 areas. Strict protocols will be in place. Ireland captain Johnny Sexton says he hasn't given up hope of playing at the next Rugby World Cup. Sexton's been the first choice out half for Ireland for the best part of a decade. He'll be 38 by the time the 2023 tournament takes place in France. Underage hurling and football competitions are set to resume in the next 10 days. Leinster, GAA and 4 members last night. They hope to play their under-20 hurling quarter-finals starting next Friday. All competitions had been on hold due to level 5 COVID-19 restrictions.
All right, good stuff, Phil. Quinn and Kelleher, very impressed. Was it better than you thought he'd be?
Absolutely, very calm with the ball at his feet, and I think that's going to be pretty reassuring for Liverpool defenders, because that's where Adrian has fallen down. Liverpool concede 7 goals with Adrian.
Is he automatically the number 2 now?
I mean, on last night's performance, it'd be hard to leave him out because, as I said, you know, he didn't do anything wrong, but he was just very assured with the ball at his feet. Didn't mess around with it. When it had to go, he got rid of it. We know he obviously played outfield as a kid and kind of developed into this goalkeeper, but Adrian has been such a nervous wreck in goal. I think that Liverpool defenders would probably rather have Kelleher there, knowing that if they play the ball back to him, he's either going to get rid of it or he won't panic and give the ball away. And
why did Adrian not get picked last night?
I think for those reasons. He let 7 goals in at Villa Park, and even
the mighty Villa, though. Everybody, that's he's not the only person that's going to happen to.
Really?
So that's it. So because Klopp said afterwards, we wanted a football-playing keeper.
Yeah. He's
my football-playing keeper. He's gonna. Is he big enough?
I mean, like he's 22 now. He's definitely filling out, and the beard adds to it as well. But yeah, like he made some really good saves. The one from Huntelaar stands out, given the significance of it was towards the end of the game. But he made a really good save in the first half, decent one in the second half, which he pushed aside, and then the Ajax missed the follow-up. But yeah, I think it couldn't have gone any better for Kelleher, put it that way.
Okay, well, hopefully he gets a bit of a run, and we'll see, because, you know, I mean, once you start playing in the Champions League, the clamour from the start for Ireland is going to be there. 0879 180 180. Thanks very much for that, Phil. More from Phil across the day on otbsports.com and on the OTB Sports app. At 7:47 this morning, we're turning our attention to Daniel Harris and Manchester United. Daniel, good morning to you. How are you?
Hiya. Good, thanks. You all right?
It says here, host of the new podcast United Rewind. Your first episode goes live today.
Yeah, that's right. We're looking back at classic United matches, and we started off with Norwich away in 92-93 season, and the first episode went live this morning, so hopefully it's acceptable in some way.
Is Norwich away 92-93, is that Steve Bruce Fergie time classic?
It's the game before that, actually,
right,
when United were... it was a game that they probably needed to win, and Mark Hughes was suspended. So everyone thought that Alex Ferguson was going to play Brian Robson to snarl and kick people, and he actually brought in Andrei Kanchelskis, so he played with 3 wingers and Eric Cantona, and United scored 3 goals in a kind of 10-minute period in the first half, and absolutely devastated Norwich. And it was probably the first time that we'd properly seen that counter-attacking football in such a way where it was just used to take a team apart. And when we look back on Alex Ferguson, to me that's one of his prime contributions to the game, is making it is kind of not, obviously he didn't invent counter-attacks, but a situation where a team is really dangerous when they're defending a corner or when they're generally defending, and the ability to get to the other end in 7 or 8 seconds and to do it repeatedly.
Okay, and you can kind of see that pattern repeat then over the next 2 decades, as it turned out, from Ferguson's perspective. Can we talk about some of the issues du jour? And I was very interested to see what you thought of Ole Gunnar Solskjaer's handling of the Cavani situation. Obviously, this is a sensitive issue for Manchester United, given how the parallels really with what went on between Luis Suarez and Patrice Evra, down to Cavani being a countryman. So how well has Ole Gunnar Solskjaer dealt with the fallout here, do you think?
I think it seemed okay. I mean, it's one of those situations where ultimately, and I got a load of aggravation for saying this on Twitter, but I still think that as someone who is not harmed in any way other than vicariously by the use of the term, it's not really, I don't really feel that it's for me to start saying, well, this is this and that is that. I understand the context of the term, that he didn't mean it to be used in any kind of way to take offence. But at the same time, it's not for me or Ole Gunnar Solskjaer to say whether it's okay or not. So yeah, I actually thought that Ole did all right, because he said that we'll go with whatever is decided. So beyond that, I think we can say for sure that he didn't mean to cause any offence, and we would hope that the fact that the potential for him to have possibly caused offence is something that he takes seriously. His statement seemed to say that, and what he did that a lot of other people haven't done is he just said sorry. He said sorry, he learned something from it and wanted to just not, there was no self-justification really. He explained the context and said sorry, and that was it. And if there is some kind of punishment, then I hope that whatever punishment there is accepted as part of a wider battle against racism. If it's decided this is strict liability and you did this and that is the punishment for that and that is always going to be the punishment for that, and everyone needs to know that that is always going to be the punishment for that, then that is fine. But as a white Jewish male, for me to say what are they going to Solskjaer say was acceptable and put everything to bed, I don't really feel like it's my place. I can have an opinion on it. Anyone can have an opinion about anything, but the value of that opinion on that subject is not significant.
Sure, no, I totally understand that they're two separate things. It's like how football deals with this issue needs to be consistent, and how the rest of the world needs to listen to voices that are most affected by it. I can see that they can exist in parallel. I guess the point you made about the punishment for this is going to be X, Y, or Z, and if that's consistent, then that would be fine. And I think maybe that's where Manchester United probably have to just agree with that and then double down and say, actually, we support that because of what happened with Patrice Evra and Luis Suarez. That's the difference, where Liverpool actually came out and went through the gymnastics to try and justify what happened with Suarez, and then obviously felt like he was being victimised. Whereas if Man United say, yeah, okay, we've had a word with Cavani, we've explained that things are slightly different here, this is the punishment, we're accepting the punishment, that would essentially be the end of that story.
Yeah, I mean, you got the impression with Suarez and Evra that if Suarez had just said sorry at the beginning, it would never have got to where it got to, but he didn't. And I think it is different, the Suarez and Evra situation. The word used was different, and Suarez used it in an argument as an insult. And actually, I can't remember now how many games he got, but whatever he got, he was lucky that it wasn't more. Because what Suarez did was very, as far as I understand it, very obviously and deliberately racist. You called someone a name that you used as an insult whilst you were arguing with them. Like there's no justification or anything or any exculpation there at all. It's just that's what it is. It's that. Whereas Cavani is different, but if we're saying that there's going to be strict liability on any use of any of these terms, however you do it, then that's fine, and that's what will be. But I don't think Suarez is only a suitable comparison, really, in that like he's Uruguayan and so is Cavani, because otherwise the term that they use just isn't the same, and the context in which they used it is also completely different. But yeah, if we're comparing reactions, then United's reaction to and Cavani's reaction to just delete it immediately, to delete his Instagram immediately, to say sorry, and for Ole to say that whatever happens subsequently will happen is obviously the way that you would want people to react, and you hope that it's genuine and not just people have learned from it, and not just what do we have to do to make this go away. But even if it is what do we have to do to make this go away, I guess it's a better way of trying to make it go away. But hopefully Cavani, his teammates, and everyone else in football has learned something. Yeah,
no, because that's all we can ever ask for as an outcome from these situations. Obviously, we could ask that it doesn't happen again. That'd be the best thing. Let's move on.
I guess that's part of learning something ultimately. Yeah. It won't be done again.
Donny van de Beek, where are we at the moment in the Manchester United fans loving him and understanding exactly what his role is, and where is the swingometer at the moment?
I think it was always somewhere good. He arrived as someone who had proven himself in the Champions League and had looked to really. I hadn't seen loads of him before he came, but I'd like what I've seen, and I think that everyone has liked what they've seen more. He's a really intelligent player. One of the things you notice about him is he's always looking over his shoulder. He's always assessing where people are on the pitch, where his teammates are, where opponents are, and it's that. I mean, I guess he's received a brilliant football education, which means that he can play in a lot of different positions, and just having him on the pitch is really useful for United, particularly because I think that it's a point where if he's not playing, if you stop Bruno Fernandes, then you go quite a long way to stopping United, because there are the strikers can all create goals for themselves and can all score out of nothing, but they're not gonna. The other midfield players, they're gonna outrun the other team, but they're not gonna outpass another team. They're not gonna create that much. But if suddenly you've got two creators in midfield, and when you have those two creators, they're both really intelligent, really good players who understand each other, that becomes much harder to stop. And so when Van der Beek plays with Fernandes, I think United look a much more dangerous, a much better team, because Fernandes isn't really a player who helps you control the game that much. He's someone who helps you win a game because he provides decisive moments with passes and goals and that kind of thing. Van der Beek gives you that, but I think that he also participates in the game more. He's also taking the ball, knocking it off, and just keeping the play moving. And the combination of those two players is great. The question is how and when Ole will be prepared to play them both together and in what context. And tonight is a good example of whether he will or whether he won't, because in most league games, United should be playing both of those two together unless they're resting one of them, because they should be better than most teams in the league. Whereas you've got a game like tonight, and my guess tonight is that Ole would prefer to play three at the back, unless Luke Shaw happens to be fit. Don't really think he can do that because Axel Tuanzebe is suspended, so he doesn't have three centre-backs that he trusts. So my guess is it will be four at the back. And then the question for Ole is, if Scott McTominay is fit, does he play a midfield three and put McTominay and Fred in there, because United basically need to not get beaten? And what they're really trying to do against a team like PSG is they're trying to shuttle them out wide, because Mbappe plays on one side, Neymar plays on the other. Neither of them are wingers, and both of them want to attack the box. So what you're looking to do is you're trying to stop up the middle of the pitch and force them to go around the sides. And one of the ways that you would do that is you play McTominay, Fred, and probably Bruno Fernandes, and that's your three. But they might play a diamond to get one more midfield player in there, and then they could play Matic in there, or they could play Van der Beek in there. And it really depends, because on the one hand, if United play Fernandes, Van der Beek, and just one of the others or two of the others, you would think that would be a midfield that is good enough to dominate PSG in that area, because ultimately PSG's midfield isn't good. Verratti is obviously a high-level player, but Herrera, Paredes, they're decent players, but they're runners. They're runners more than they're passers. That you would not expect them to dominate. But on the other hand, if United are busy dominating in midfield, that makes them vulnerable to a counter from Neymar and Mbappe, who are two of the best players in the world at punishing mistakes, punishing space. And United do only need a point. But when you start playing for a point, and if you send the message to the players that a point will suffice, then the attitude changes. So it is a difficult one tonight. I guess what I would do, now that Ole Gunnar Solskjaer asks, is I would probably play four in midfield. I'd play a diamond and two strikers, because that would enable the midfield control and also the midfield spoiling.
Have you seen a higher individual level from Manchester United players when you come up against teams such as Paris Saint-Germain the first game, such as RB Leipzig in the first game as well, that it's more than the tactical approach, more than the other team expecting to get something against Manchester United, that this set of players really does rise to these sort of big European occasions?
It's a bit of that. It's also, there's a few. First of all, they're really good players, a lot of them, and their top level is a really good level, so that if they're playing in a big game, it seems that they're able to raise their level to that top level, because it's not that they can turn it on and off, but it would obviously get anyone going. Playing in the Champions League versus playing Burnley at home or whatever, you can understand why some players might get more up for one than for the other, because the kind of players that United have is that they probably lack one or two more of those players who are there every game, who inspire those around them. And that's one of the things that Bruno Fernandes has brought. He's there every game. It doesn't matter who it's against. He's intense every game, whereas United have some players who don't quite have that personality where they are intense every game. So there's a bit of that. There's also the fact that United are really good on the counter, and so they're offered more space in which to counter in those games. Also, it seems like Ole, the coaches, whoever's responsible for the coaching, the tactics, are better at arranging it for these kind of games. But I also think that there's a level of understanding, the understanding that you need to go forward to create chances in a game against a slightly better team in some ways can be less than when you're playing against a blanket defence. And they've got better at the blanket, at scoring against teams who defend deep, but the cohesion that you require to pull them apart takes time. And the reason why the teams that were best at it were so good at it, like Liverpool and Man City, is partly because the managers and the coaches are great, but it's also because they've been playing together for longer. And the more you play together for longer, you develop patterns of play that are intuitive, where you know where your teammates are going to be. And United are getting better at that, but they're not quite there yet. So I think that as with most things, there are a few reasons, and football is also quite a random game, and it's not a very large sample size, so we also need to bear that in mind as well.
On Edinson Cavani, the footballer then, did you see enough at the weekend to suggest that he could become Manchester United's first choice number 9 pretty instantly?
Maybe. I think that the way as I said, tonight I would play a diamond. So, and I think that that's what they will do. My guess would be the 2 strikers will be him and Martial tonight, because both of them can hold the ball up, and that will take the pressure off. And that then means that you have Marcus Rashford and Mason Greenwood to throw on when PSG are tired. So I think the thing about Cavani that's different to all the other strikers is he's a striker. And that sounds like a ridiculous thing to say, but Marcus Rashford likes to drop off. He wants the ball to feet. He wants to run. He doesn't always run in behind, and he doesn't always gamble, which is one of the reasons he's good off the left, because he's coming from in to out, and you're sort of shuttling him inside. Anthony Martial has sort of he's a good finisher, but he's great turned and running at a defence, but he's had to learn to make the runs that Cavani is already making, and he's still not making enough of them. He doesn't get enough free goals, and it's the same with Marcus Rashford. You don't see those guys score enough tap-ins. Mason Greenwood is an amazing finisher, one of the best finishers I've ever seen in my life, and it sounds like a ludicrous thing to say about someone who's played so rarely, or relatively rarely, or relatively seldom, but he's an unbelievable finisher. But he's an unbelievable finisher with the ball at his feet. As in, if you give him the ball anywhere around the box, he will almost definitely hit the target, and there's a really good chance that he'll score. But again, he's not yet a poacher. Whereas Cavani, you see that he just has an ability to understand where the ball's going to drop from prediction, trial and error, having done it lots of times. If you saw the first goal that he scored at the weekend, he knows that Bruno Fernandes is going to shoot. He knows that there's a good chance his shot doesn't go on target, and therefore there's a good chance he can get to it. And he runs, they showed it on Match of the Day too, I think. He runs past 4 or 5 players, but he's on the move when he makes that header, when everyone else is standing still. And that is something that no one else in the squad really does. And he also gives you a hold-up option as well. And his movement's always been great. It's not something he's necessarily learned because of experience. I mean, I'm sure he's got better at it, but he's always been good at that. That's always been one of his things. So it doesn't necessarily mean that he is the striker that United would want for every game, but it does mean free goals. And when Alex Telles is playing, it means headers and one-touch finishes at the near post, because I think United haven't crossed the ball much recently in the last couple of years. And I think one of the reasons is they don't have strikers who attack the near post, and the other reason is they don't have wingers and players who can deliver a ball. They now have both of those things, and that gives them a different option of scoring goals. So I think that Cavani won't play every game, probably isn't right for every game, but I would say that if United are playing 2 strikers tonight, I'll be sure that he'll be one of them, because he scored 2 goals at the weekend. He's on a buzz. Why would you not leech off that?
Everybody always scores against their former clubs as well. Good stuff, Daniel. Thanks a million for joining us this morning. Cheers.
See you in a sec. Cheers, guys. Bye.
Daniel Harris there, and you can get his new podcast wherever you get your podcasts. This morning it is 4 minutes past 8. We're talking Ireland's defeat to Germany with Ruth Fahy. We'll have our football preview with Kevin Walsh and Mickey Quinn, looking at the All-Ireland football semi-finals this weekend. And Kilkenny legend Taggy Fogarty joins us next. Stay tuned.
OTB AM. This is OTB Sports Radio.
The Sunday paper review on OTB.
You know, if you wanted to, have one article that basically merited buying the paper alone today, or any paper, this piece with Andy Townsend is absolutely beautiful, because it's a 2-piece spread in the Sindo, and it works in so many layers that you don't expect. It's just a beautiful, beautiful piece of journalism that goes way beyond sport.
Digesting the best stories on the back pages every Sunday afternoon on OTB Sports Radio. Tune in 24/7 on the OTB Sports app.
For live GAA score updates, stats and more as they happen, check out the new GAA Live Match Centre on the Boyle Sports app. Why not check out the hottest action on the biggest match of the week right now and make Boyle Sports #1 for GAA this championship season. Boyle Sports. This is betting. Need help? Contact gamblingcare.ie. 18+.
OTB AM.
With Gillette, your most supported our frontline workers this Movember.
5 minutes past 8, let's take you through the newspapers this morning. It's ridiculous. Ireland have cause to regret latest disappointment. That's the women's national team beaten 3-1 by Germany last night, but really they'd blown their qualification hopes against Ukraine and Greece earlier on. That's what I'm here for. Kelleher revels in big performance. That's Quinn Kelleher speaking last night in the aftermath of his Champions League debut. Leinster GA hoping to resume underage competitions. We'll get to that a little bit later on in the show as well. Zidane insists he won't resign as Real boss after Shakhtar defeat. Can you believe it? It's reached this point where Zinedine Zidane, who looked like he had the greatest coaching CV in history, is now on the verge of being sacked or having to resign as manager of Real Madrid. And if they're not out, it's not done yet, they could still make it. And then Vera Pauw, emotional Pauw's decision to make over future. My heart is here, so whether or not she'll get the opportunity to stick with that, we will see. It is 6 minutes past 8 here. I'll run you through the newspaper headlines. Gordon Darcy has written a brilliant piece this morning about David Nucifora. After the euphoria of 2018, where is Ireland's progress under Nucifora? This is the type of thing that's going to have them sitting up and choking on their cornflakes this morning in IRFU headquarters, because he's very coldly and analytically laid out the reasons why he doesn't feel like Nucifora is just delivering any success at the moment. The Telegraph, nation counts 50 billion cost of activity crisis. This is just how people not doing sport is actually really bad for the country and the nation's health. Then the tabloids, obviously, all on Liverpool last night. Rebel with applause. That's Quinn Kelleher. Top boys is the kids that were playing for Jurgen Klopp last night. I guess 3 academy players starting. It's not bad. And then more top club clashes in new European plans. We didn't even get to talk about that. The Champions League, as we know it, will not be the Champions League anymore from 2024. They're going to have this absolutely ridiculous notion that you'll play everybody once or twice, and then the top teams will qualify at the end of it. So it's essentially a league. There will be no more groups, no group stages. It's going to be a European Super League that you play over the course of the whole season. Is that what we want, really? Porky Quiveen, top of the morning to you?
Yes, absolutely, 100%.
And Sexton digs in. We'll talk about that a little bit later on. Rugby 2, Johnny Sexton wants to play all the way through until the World Cup. Right, former Kilkenny hurler Aidan Fogarty is with us to launch the Electric Ireland GA Minor Star Special Recognition Awards. The awards will see Electric Ireland shine a light on young minors who've gone above and beyond in their communities throughout 2020. Open for now until December 14th, and you can nominate your local minor hero at electricireland.ie/minor awards. Good morning to you, Aidan. How are you getting on?
Hi guys, how are you doing?
Yeah, good. Can we start by talking about Brian Cody? Every year that Kilkenny go out of the championship or reach the end of the season, chatter begins to start about, geez, Cody's been around a long time, hasn't he? It's true he has, but for the first time ever, there's actually 5 or 6 candidates who could legitimately step in, it feels like, and take the job. We saw it with the Tyrone situation. Mickey Hart has decided to step away and immediately took a new gig. What's the chatter in Kilkenny at the moment? Is Brian Cody coming back next year, do you think?
Yeah, I suppose I'm hearing this since I retired myself, and that's about 6 years ago now, lads. So it's on the tongues of the Kilkenny people for a long time. So look, he's in the job since '99. It's going to be Brian Cody's decision whether he stays or goes. No one's going to tell him whether he wants to go or not. Personally, I think this year, I don't think he'll go because of the COVID situation. He picked the backroom team there only this year. And we always talk about freshening things up and changing managers and stuff. But what Brian Cody kind of has done is he changes the backroom team to keep the freshness in the team and in the squad. So he's gone through about 4 or 5 backroom teams now, up to date. So with COVID and with the fresh backroom team, I think he's going to stay for next year. Look, next year is literally only 5-6 weeks away anyway. So I think he's going to stay there till the year after. Now, on the flip side of that, it's 5 years since that Ireland final for Kilkenny. It's won the Leinster title in 4 years. I think if it was any other manager, tongues would be wagging an awful lot more in Kilkenny. But it's just the fact that he has this massive record through the years. But that record really has kind of diminished since 2015. So questions are being asked. There are people in Kilkenny who have proved themselves as managers. Henry Shefflin, obviously, Eddie Brennan and David Herity as well, who used to play in the goal. He's obviously up for nomination as well. So there is guys that can take it over, but I don't think he'll go this year. Okay, that's interesting. And is there also, because they haven't been winning All Irelands at the usual clip, is there a recognition that the players aren't there, or is there a belief that the players are there and the team isn't performing to its potential at the moment? Probably in Kilkenny, the belief is probably the players aren't there. And that's probably, they're comparing them probably to the Kilkenny team before this one. So say the one I was on, maybe the 10, 11, 12, that Kilkenny team, which is probably unfair on the players. Now, look, you have to look at the results this year even, how Kilkenny performed. They scraped over Dublin. They won a Leinster final where I felt Galway were actually the better team. They just stayed in there. And if you look at the way Kilkenny are hurling, it's more of a kind of a grit, a hard work, a determination. And they are traits that are associated with Brian Cody, and they're Brian Cody's ethos. So you'd imagine if Brian Cody left, what way would the Kilkenny team be then? Would another person be able to come in with that kind of an aura and presence and get that ability out of these hurlers? Because it was shown there against the semi-finalists, the second half, we were absolutely blown out of the water. So the belief in Kilkenny is that the players are probably not there, but they're being just held together by this belief that comes from probably Brian Cody. And there's two sides of it. If Brian Cody goes, will it freshen the whole thing up and lads buy into the whole thing of a new manager? Or if he stays, will it just go staying? That's probably the question you have to ask. Yeah, and look, we don't know the answer. That is the $64 million question. Is it going to be like things were at Manchester United after Alex Ferguson went, where it's taken a long time to get to a point where, and even now, are they even back to a point where you can realistically say they're contenders for any of the competitions they play in? That would be the fear, that grit and determination goes because he's the glue holding it together. But the other flip side is that Eddie Brennan has proved himself to be a very modern manager who's ready for the modern game, and maybe that's also what the county needs. So you're kind of trapped a little bit. Yeah, absolutely. Look, I remember playing my latter years under Brian, and he was slow to change to the kind of to the touch hurling. So ball to hands, work it out from defence, sharp puck outs. He was very slow at the time to change to that. Now he has changed his manner on that way now. All right, good to see with Kilkenny, but the likes of Eddie Brennan, fresh face, has done the business, and it's interesting to note. A lot of players have gone in with Brian Cody. Even this year, you have Martin Comerford, you have DJ Carey, you have James McGarry. Before that, you had Derek Ling. You know, kind of ex-players gone underneath Brian. And the feeling was that when these guys went in, that they were the next in line. But the two guys that have never went in are Henry Shefflin and Eddie Brennan. And I'm just wondering, do they feel that if they got the opportunity to do the job, do they just want a clean slate of not being under Brian Cody, bringing in their absolute own techniques and not being associated with the techniques of Brian, if you get me, just for the players' sake. So it's interesting to note that them guys didn't actually go in. And I think they were asked over the years, I can't be certain, but I'm sure maybe there's a phone call made here and there and they didn't go in. So just interesting to note maybe for the future that maybe they thought down the line they might be able to get the job.
That's very interesting. The idea that if Kilkenny take a heavy beating, the entire management team will get blamed, essentially, and maybe trying to avoid that if you're not the top man, not the manager, is probably a good political move from Shefflin's point of view, for example. Yeah, I believe so, yeah. You know, if Henry kind of went in now underneath Brian and Kilkenny didn't do well, there's kind of a stain there already, because Henry then is staying on and he's going to be the next manager, but they're still kind of playing from last year. So if Brian went with no kind of ties to any selector underneath him and a span new manager came in, I think it'd be just freshen the whole thing up a little bit more. Now, not to say, sure, Brian, who knows when Brian's going to go, but I just thought it's interesting that the guys didn't go in underneath Brian, that I felt that they wanted to bring their own thing to it. Now, that's if they want the job. It's like, we just don't know. We're only speculating, of course. But there is people in Kilkenny, and Kilkenny don't go outside for a manager. All through the years, they've kept it in-house. There's enough of people in Kilkenny that have hurled with Kilkenny, that have won Ireland's with Kilkenny and All-Stars, that are well capable of taking over Kilkenny when it comes to it. But the thing is, as we said already, would it fall apart with kind of a new management, like I said, the Alex Ferguson stint, or would it bring a whole new freshness to the side? Look, I think there is a new freshness needed to Kilkenny. How they get that freshness, I'm not sure. You know, you can change managers all you want, but it has to come down to the players too. They're the guys on the field. They're the guys playing on the day. And the feeling is the players
aren't, I suppose they're not as good as the players that have gone past. Now, the players that are gone past, you have hurlers of the years, you have, like, that doesn't happen every year. That was just kind of a bit of a phenomenon. It happens every so often. You can look at Ballyhale. Ballyhale are a small club in Kilkenny, but they produce these players every kind of 7 to 10 years, you know, the Fennellys and the Corys and stuff. So it's kind of a generation and generation thing. It doesn't happen every year. So you just have to go with what you have at the minute and play to their best abilities and get the best out of them.
Like you say, it's just like speculation that the likes of Shetland and Brennan will be interested in the job, but if you take the Ballyhale club job or if you take the Laois County job, there's probably a chance you want to be Kilkenny manager at some point. You've proven that you're interested in the actual art of management in the first place, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, the fact that you do actually take on management roles in clubs. You know, I've been asked over the years maybe to train clubs and stuff. I just felt I wasn't ready, that I was still hurling, and I just give it all when I'm still hurling, that I wouldn't mix the boat. But the fact that I actually got into management, you'd imagine the next step is going to be intercounty. Now, I feel Eddie has a little bit of a step on Henry in that front, because Henry actually hasn't trained an intercounty team. Eddie Brennan has gone into Laois, who are doing very poorly in the Joe McDonagh Cup, in a relegation of the Joe McDonagh Cup, and turned the whole year around and did superb with them. So I think he's a step ahead of Eddie is a step ahead of Henry in that front, because he actually has trained an intercounty team. Henry, on the flip side, probably has the more accolades and probably the more presence, but Eddie has the more experience.
Maybe they could dream team it, could they?
Maybe they could dream team it. Yeah, they can call me in there if they want as well, and I can help out if I can get to these matches and get a good seat.
Taggy Fogarty issues, come and get me plea to new dream team. That's the headline we're running with.
Yeah, that's it. Or maybe I could just go into management, lads. But never forget about Henry and Eddie.
What's your plans? You obviously are interested yourself.
Look, as I said, I'm still playing hurling myself, so I said I wouldn't mix the both of them. So, but I would be interested down the line, I think. I think it's nice to kind of give back to the GEA world. I'd probably start maybe with my own club and go from there. And that's not to say, like, you've heard with Kilkenny, you've heard at elite level, you've heard at a high level, but management is totally different. It's nearly kind of a CEO of a company, and it's kind of a business ordeal, because you're doing everything in behind the scenes. Like, I was talking to David Herity and the phone calls he's making and the things he's trying to organise. And I was thinking, like, this should be kind of taken out of your hands. You should just manage the team. And he said, look, at the lower levels, this is what you have to do and this is what you need. You need your finger on the pulse always. So I just felt myself, I would be interested, but not when I'm still playing.
He's done a great job. Like, Kelleher are rightly delighted with how well he's done. And you know, he's somebody who's proven it in Camogie as well. I think that there's a really interesting career ahead of him. Anytime you talk to him, you kind of come away feeling like you've learned something too. So let's move on and talk about the All-Ireland final, because obviously we've reached that point where I think people are talking themselves into Waterford potentially turning Limerick over, and a lot of it has to do with the inside forwards. We figured we might try and focus on, in particular, the Waterford inside forwards with you, just to get your impression of how well they're doing this year. In some respects, it's one of the most unexpected inside forward lines that we've ever seen, given the circuitous route and the health issues that they've both taken respectively to get here. But how well are the two lads doing?
Well, the whole forward line for Waterford, I feel, has kind of changed, and that's probably from Liam Carl's touch on them, really. You know, you have Desi Hutchinson, who's after coming back from a professional outfit in kind of the Brighton soccer, and it's all well documented. He played for Brighton and things, so he's come back into the scene. So he has straight away has a professional mind and a professional kind of an outlook on trying to get the best out of himself in the corner. Austin Gleeson is starting kind of in a full forward, kind of a roaming role, and then you have Jack Prendergast obviously in the other corner. So Austin Gleeson tends to kind of drift out around, and the two guys then are just creating havoc inside. Now, the thing is with that full forward line that I would be slightly worried about is they're probably getting perfect ball at times. You know, the half forward line of Kieran Bennett, Stephen Bennett and Jack Fagan, and the runs of Taggy Burkett, they're spraying perfect ball in, only at times now, but they're reaping the benefits of them. If you look at Hutchison the last day, he wasn't getting that fabulous bounce, first touch bounce into your hand ball. And I'm just wondering about the fight ethic. But if you give him perfect ball, they will destroy you. And the second thing to note, I think, is their directness and their movement with the ball. Before, maybe under Derek McGrath, they were kind of going linear, they were going across the lines. But by God, when them boys get the ball into their hand, they are going straight at the goal. And if you look at Stephen Bennett, what a year he's been having. He's been hampered with injuries when he was 20. I think he has 2 operations on his hip, only at 20 years of age. Was it 4? Yeah, like it's mental at 20 years of age. And he's coming back in 24, 25. The hips are probably a little bit better. I think Liam Cahill brought a freshness to him and a belief to him, but he is just setting the things alight. And Jack Fagan, I heard with Jack Fagan in college in Carlow. I went back to college when I left Kilkenny around 32 years of age, and he was brilliant for us. And he's from Meath, and I just like this. He's just such a talented man, and he's on the half-forward line, really good in the air. But their direct running and they're running off the shoulder is really what impressed me.
If you're an inside forward like, say, Desi Hutchinson, is there an element of patience that's required in the modern game where all your teammates can basically puck the ball over the bar from 60, 70 yards? How much of it is a waiting game and just waiting for your opportunity?
Yeah, you've hit the nail on the head. I've often stayed in there for balls, waiting, and I got the curly finger from Brian Cody, so that's no good in my game. But like it's playing into the team plan. It's playing into the bigger picture. Like if they come out, they have to stay in there, and they're being told to stay in there. And what they're being told by Liam Cahill is, it will happen. You will get the ball. All they need is 3 or 4 balls into the hand in the whole game, and they will punish you. So it is a waiting game. It's a frustrating, but it has to come from management, because if you don't tell a player that you will get the ball, stay in there, don't panic. We're not going to. Well, he's not going to say we're not going to take you off, but look, we just say, look, just don't panic, stay in there. Because if you don't tell a player that, he's going to get anxious. And then if you get anxious, you're kind of moving out the field. I found it myself. I'm kind of moving out towards the ball and following the ball a little bit. But the whole game has changed, because the movement even across the lines, the possession rate is a lot better. Ball to hand, for trying to find a guy in a better position. This is all playing into Waterford and playing into Limerick as well, and it's playing into the modern era of hurling. Before, it was just lump the ball down and win your own ball. And that was our way. But that, in one sense, that was a tactic, because we had great men in the air that would win ball. We had physical guys. So that's the way we played. But you have to change tactics for what you have. And I think with the guys inside, you can look at Gillette as well. He waits for his moment. And the last day they had to put Mannion back to cut out that ball coming in. And that was a man straight away gone from the half-forward line.
So that's good management by the sounds of things, Aidan, to actually get the best out of an inside forward, to actually communicate to your player that if you stay in, you'll get the chance. Don't worry about the curly finger. Don't leave inside the opposition 21-yard line or whatever it is. Stay in there. You'll get your chance, and I'll lead you on.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and it has to come from it's communication. It's believing in the player, and it's the player believing in the manager. You know, there's nothing worse if you're thinking, God, I could be called off here after 10 minutes, because straight away you're looking over your shoulder. Straight away you're anxious. I need to get on the ball. And you don't need to get on the ball at all if that's what you're being told, if that's the game plan. Stay in. Now, the game changes. I find the game changes so quick this summer and the last couple of years, because they either have a game plan to spray in the ball. The best thing to do is spray the ball towards maybe the corners, or just put it outside the full forward line so they can latch onto it. And if that's not working, then if there's a sweeper back, they have to be told, guys, if there's a sweeper back, we're going to try aiming for the half-forward line. You can see Gerard Hegarty, you seen Morrissey the last time. They kind of stay out. It wasn't getting productive inside because of Mannion. So they kept the ball in the half-forward line, taking long-range scores. And that's okay, as long as the whole team know it and the full forward know that this now is the plan, rather than trying to hit the full forward line all the time.
But that must be very frustrating as an inside forward up against a sweeper then, if that is the tactic around it, rather than going for the corners and going laterally against a sweeper, you actually just drop the ball short to your half-forward line. It must just alienate the full forward line quite a bit, the advent of the sweeper.
It does, absolutely, yeah. Now, like, you're obviously going to have balls to the full forward line at times, but your game plan technically is gone. So it is so frustrating. And that's where the waiting game goes. That's where the patience is. And that's where the belief in the management team and the management team having you that just stay in there. This is our game plan now. That's not to say you're not to work. Like, most of the time, you spend most of the game of the ball not in your hand. So I'm presuming these guys are told, off the ball, you are making runs, you are harassing, you are hooking, you are out there. So you're not out of the game completely. You're absolutely in the game, but in a work rate mentality, rather being on the scoreboard.
You mentioned Galan. Sorry, you had a point there. I won't go on that. I'll pick up on Galan afterwards.
No, it actually was a point on Galan I was going to make. That, like what you're saying there, Aidan, suggests to me that Limerick are the team best placed to withstand an injury like Aaron Gillane. Of course, every team wants to have a player of that quality available, but because of the power of that half-forward line and because of the way that they've shown that they can change up their game quite a bit, they might actually be able to survive without Gillane in a big game like an All-Ireland.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, they might. Well, it depends how the other team is setting up. If they have a sweeper cutting across, then obviously they're going to start from the half forward line is going to come into play hugely. But the half forward line anyway on any team is a huge part of the play now, between work rate, between getting possession, between shooting through the lines. But I think Limerick at the minute are in a best position to hurl like that, because we've seen them do it. We've seen the full forward line destroying teams, and then we've seen guys putting back, say like the Mannion the last day, try to hamper their effect. And who took over the mantle? Only Hegarty, Morrissey, Kyle Hayes. The wing backs are making runs up along the side, so they were taking them on the side, and they're told, there's no doubt about it, they're told if there's a sweeper and if Gillane is under pressure, go for the score. And when you go for the score, you can't be like, they can't say, why did you do that? You don't see the forwards looking up with their hands kind of hanging saying, let it in, because they know that this is the game plan now. But I think Limerick are set up very good in that sense.
Who do you think's going to win?
Oh God, I've 2 weeks I thought to think about this. It's a difficult one. It's so hard. I think Waterford are just hopping, and I know it's in Ireland. It's going to be so strange. No people there. The belief in the Waterford team in that second half, and I think the first half against Kilkenny, they were just nervous. It was just a nervous energy, poor decision making. But when they went at it and when they ran at Kilkenny, they absolutely destroyed them. Now Limerick are a different kettle of fish altogether. I think the hurt, there's hurt there from Limerick. There has to be, and hurt drives on a team hugely. Kilkenny caught him in a semi-final last year, and they would have loved seeing Kilkenny in an Ireland final. Don't get me wrong, they would have loved it. Yeah. Because when you get beaten by a team, all you have in the back of your head is, I want that team again to get back at them. So I think the hurt, the loss of the semi-final last year will drive on Limerick hugely. Now Waterford are coming in, nothing to lose. Like, they're in such bonus territory already, but they are absolutely hopping. But I just feel, with passion, with the heart, with the panel that maybe Limerick have, KSC, they have English, guys like this to come on, Pat Ryan, they just look as if they're really determined. And when they're under the pressure, the likes of Hegarty and these guys are stepping up to the mantle. Like, they're not panicking. So I'm just, at the minute, I'm tipping Limerick.
Okay, close, and I understand it. I think that's going to be the case, and I think a lot of it will be about. And so it might come down to who's available and who's not available. Who's your hurler of the year so far?
Hurler of the year, God, I suppose. Look, hurler of the years are usually picked on our Ireland finals anyway. So for me, there's probably 2 from Limerick and 2 from Waterford stepping up to the plate. Kyle Hayes, I think, wing back, playing fantastic stuff. Just really attacking player. But Garrod Hegarty, I think, for Limerick is my hurler of the year so far. He's just been awesome in tackling, in hooking, in his contribution to the Limerick team all round. He scored 4 points against Galway, 2 against Waterford, 2 against Tip, and 5 against Clare. So he's on the scoreboard. But the more important thing is, when Limerick are under pressure, who would you look for? The goalie, he pokes it down on top of Hegarty to win a ball. Hegarty seems to win a free. He catches it out of the air. He just drags Limerick through them tough spots. And teams are always going to get, a run on you. But Hegarty, just win a free, get on the ball, make a hook and block. Just superb. And if you look at the rest of them, probably Stephen Bennett on the Waterford team is probably the other one I was thinking about, Untitled Chapter. But I think they have to have big matches in the All-Ireland to get hurler of the year. Hegarty just has to do enough to get hurler of the year, because I think he's in pole position. Yeah,
he is at the moment. He's the favourite as well. It's great to have you with us this morning, and it sounds like you're sharpening your brain in preparation for whatever coaching career is coming next. So keep it up. It's good stuff.
Yeah, no, I'll keep doing what I'm doing, and I'll hurl for as long as I can, as long as the body lets me, and then I'll see what I'll do then.
How long is that, do you think? Are you like one of these American footballers who's going to go until you're 44, 45, or is it nearly imminent?
The last 3 years, I was thinking, no, I've no Crawford now. I'm going to go. And next thing, the sun comes out, and it's July, and the ground is nice and dry, and I'm like, lads are asking me, Asher, you may as well come back, sure, you know. And the big thing for me is that I think I'm still contribution to the team. I'm not just a name there anymore, so I'm still kind of contributing, and the body is in decent shape. I'm not breaking down with injuries. If I was breaking down with injuries every day, I'd probably call it a day. So at the minute, probably not, but next July, I probably will.
Oh, well. On that note, great to have you with us this morning. Cheers. Thanks.
Thanks, guys. Okay, cheers.
It's Aidan Taggy Fogarty there, and I just want to tell you about he was helping launch the Electric Ireland GAA Minor Star Special Recognition Awards. The awards will see Electric Ireland shine a light on young miners who've gone above and beyond in their communities throughout 2020. It's open from now until the 14th of December, and you can nominate your local minor hero at electricireland.ie/minor awards. And the under 20 and minor championships was announced last night are actually going to be resuming before Christmas, so we're looking forward to that. It is 8:31 here this morning. If you want to get in touch with us, you can WhatsApp us 0879 180 180, and of course a reminder, OTB AM is live in association with Gillette. Good morning start with Gillette, giving you the confidence to tackle the day ahead. I suppose it would be ridiculous, and Tony Kelly thought it would be ridiculous for somebody who exited the championship at the stage they went out, for him to be hurler of the year.
You obviously have the odds in front of you there. Was he featuring?
Ger Eoin 9-4, Stephen Bennett 9-2, Cian Lynch 7-1, Taggy 7-1, Galan 8-1, Tom Morrissey 12-1, Tony Kelly out to 25-1.
Yeah, it doesn't really stand a hope ahead after those. Like the names that you listed out there, a large swathe of them are going to be All-Ireland champions in a few weeks, and that's going to seal it. I think Tadhg Burke is somebody that perhaps is gone unnoticed. I definitely thought Saturday, not unnoticed, sorry, but maybe not spoken about in the conversation for Hurler of the Year. I mean, I thought Saturday night when I was watching that, it was like, this guy's clearly going to be Hurler of the Year. Then obviously you watch a little bit of Limerick and you see how ruthless they are and how brilliant they are, and you think to yourself, there's 3 or 4 options here for Hurler of the Year. So for me, it'll be Tadhg Burke as the leading light from Waterford in that conversation, whereas for Limerick there's probably 2 or 3 lads that you can pick out. Like Kyle Hayes back to wing back has been a revelation. Who would have thought that one of your great offensive weapons, you could get more out of that player by dropping them deeper? I guess it just shows again the evolution of hurling.
Yeah, I mean, I wonder, like in any other county, would Jack McCaffrey be a half forward? He probably would, but in Dublin you can turn him into a halfback and actually get loads from him from an attacking sense. And I wonder if that's a similar, except obviously different sport. Kyle Hayes is as big as 28-1 though, so if you figure he's going to be a man of the match in the All-Ireland final, that would certainly run him close in regards to that. Johnny Sexton is on the back page of all of the papers today. We'll bring you the audio from that from John Duggan in a couple of minutes' time as well. That was one of the stories that we were going to cover, and some of the other stuff that we wanted to talk about as well. The ladies' football had the semi-final booked, Cork against Galway, but it was moved to Parnell Park now to accommodate training for the Limerick hurlers. The Gaelic grounds have been booked. This is a story that is brewing at the moment. So Cork against Galway, the ladies' football semi-final had been booked for there, but it's now been moved to Parnell Park to accommodate training for the Limerick hurlers.
Right, I've not seen that until now. That's incredible. So obviously there's been a double booking on the Gaelic grounds as well, is what you were saying there.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, a double booking, a training session. Yeah.
Right, that's extraordinary. That's obviously a big story that's brewing here. To have a training session ahead of you for a massive match, regardless of what the code is, regardless of what the level is, that seems remarkable. And I presume as well that the match would have been pre-booked in the grounds, and that a training session that's after coming up is now pushing that out of the ground, which kind of doesn't make it look good at all. Actually,
I think there had been a proviso that if the hurlers made the All-Ireland final, that they need to be taking it. So there you go.
Right. Like, I mean, it's moving that game isn't great, to be quite honest with you. That's those venues are really important, and like obviously there's been a lot of work done over the last couple of years to try and get those fixtures into a place where either they're before men's games or actually the main event in a lot of situations. And the venues are important. Feeling like a sense of occasion, even without crowds there, are really important. that doesn't really sit well, to be quite honest with you, looking at that story this morning.
Right, Ruth Fahy is going to join us a little bit later on to talk to us about the Republic of Ireland's 3-1 defeat against Germany. But here is Kathleen McNamee on what the Ireland team are missing, even though they should be at the Euros.
Completely, and I think you can see it really clearly where we're falling down as well. You know, it's the confidence in those games. We don't seem to be playing particularly well whenever we go into games where we're thought to be the stronger side. It's, you know, the very basics. There were so many times this evening where a pass was coming in and our first touch was off and it was handing the ball straight back to the Germans. You know, in the first half, I thought we were so standoffish. We were letting the Germans get so much space around the box, which is just, it led to the goals. And it just, you can't do it with that sort of team. And we seemed almost afraid to kind of get in their faces a bit. And obviously, like, Katie McCabe was so unfortunate with the penalty. You know, it wasn't a penalty. But the thing that the Germans were doing is they were playing for those fouls. They were being smart. They were, you know, catching us in those moments. And, like, that's what we need. And I think that's what we miss sometimes with having, you see it with players like Katie McCabe and Denise O'Sullivan who are playing with top teams. But just that final, like, killer edge to really kind of grind out a game in even the ugliest way possible if we need to. Yeah, we I don't know, certainly Germany found it very easy to go 2-0 up, and that was kind of the ball game, although we get back into it and create some chances at 2-1. You would hope that there's been plenty of learnings, and it looks like Vera Pauw wants to stay. She said her heart is with it, so we'll see what Ruth Fahy thinks in a little while as well when she joins us. So that's going to be in about 15 minutes time. In the meantime, we'd love to hear from you. 0879 180 180 is the number. Now we're obviously at the semi-final stage of the 2020 GA Football All-Ireland Senior Championships. To celebrate that, Super Value, as part of their Support Where You're From campaign, have given us some great prizes to give away. We want you to dig out your favourite ticket stub or match programme, jersey, a photo with your hero, any GA-related item that you've been dying to tell the country about. We'll just make a short video, 20 seconds, 30 seconds, whatever. WhatsApp it to us at 0879 180 180, and we will choose a winner every Friday during the championship. Each weekly winner lands a €200 voucher for Super Value near you, and also the chance to star in Super Value's Superfans series. That's a fly-on-the-wall peek inside the homes of dedicated supporters around the country. Super Value, proud sponsors of the GA Football All-Ireland Senior Championship. See facebook.com/Super Value Ireland for more details. If you want to talk to us about the Football Championship at the weekend as well, we're going to be talking about that with Mickey Quinn and with Kevin Walsh, the former Galway manager. He's got a new book out called The Invisible Game, so they're going to help us to preview the All-Ireland football semi-finals. A lot of people concerned about the Cavan game, Owen. A lot of concern about the fact that this is the biggest price semi-final that there's ever been in history.
Wow, I'm not surprised to hear that. I know we struck a very negative tone yesterday, but the one thing that we can use as hope for this game is that people who know a lot about football were giving Donegal a chance against Dublin this year. They felt that on paper, this Donegal team could withstand the Dublin challenge for a while at least. I think that most people genuinely believed that after watching Donegal dismantle Armagh, on paper that Donegal team would have been good enough to give Dublin problems for 50, 60 minutes, maybe. The thing is, Cavan went out and didn't fluke it against Donegal. They beat them fair and square, were the better team on the day, and more importantly, have had an incredible mentality throughout the Ulster Championship. Jurgen Klopp will be blown away by the mentality monsters that has been Cavan in this year's Football Championship. The comebacks, the getting over the fact that they played quite poorly in swathes of the game against Monaghan, the performance to hold on, be down a man for a while against Donegal.
Twice.
This is a team with a really strong bedrock, a really strong psychology. And we have seen that Dublin, if you have a weak mentality, will just make bits of you. It is something, unfortunately, for a multitude of reasons, that is bestowed upon a lot of Leinster counties at the moment in particular. A county like Meath just will struggle forever to get the monkey off their back in this regard. And it's doubly tough for those Leinster counties because they know that they can't win a provincial title without beating the best team of all time. For Cavan, they have that freedom and they have the ability to go out and know that actually they can beat anybody in Ulster at this point. They don't have the baggage that a team like Meath will have. They're a slightly better team than Meath. They're not a much better team than Meath. They will probably get beaten healthily again this weekend. But if you're looking for one reason why Cavan might give them a game, it is that mentality. It is the jungle of emotion that they've been through in this year's championship, which can only stand them in good stead.
All right, the blood is up. Well done. 087 9180 180 if you're a Cavan fan, inspired by that to enjoy your 12-point beating as opposed to your 15-point beating at the weekend. Or if you've got, I don't know, well, look, we'll ask the lads for their template a little bit later on for what you might do with the Dubs game. It's 8:40. John Duggan is with us this morning to chat to us about what's going on. John, how are you?
Good, Ger Eoin. Are you well?
Good.
Kelleher is the star of the show in the world. This morning, Liverpool qualifying for the group stage of the Champions League, top of Group D. Kelleher clean sheet against Ajax, a 1-0 win last night. A couple of really good saves laid on from Huntelaar, especially his distribution was good. He was very calm. Klopp made a beeline for him after the game. So at 22 years of age, been on the books quite a long time in Liverpool, Ringmahan Rangers on Lee side, and he was preferred to Adrian. And Kelleher spoke to BT Sport after the game.
We're not here just to take part. We want to push every day and try to play as many games as we can. You can see that now that we're actually making a difference and we're improving the team as well. So yeah, it's good.
You've made a lot of Liverpool fans very happy, particularly the ones in Cork tonight. A few messages from home?
Yeah, geez, my phone's been hopping now since I got in. So yeah, just a big thanks to everyone there. All the support and messages I've been getting, I'm just thankful for it all.
Just a great story. Curtis Jones scoring the only goal of the game in the second half for Liverpool. Kelleher might get more games in goal now because Alisson's got a hamstring injury. Adrian is third in the pecking order, it seems, and manager Jurgen Klopp has praised Kelleher.
We needed the package of Queef, and Queef is a top talent anyway, but a really good shot stopper and a top footballer. So and we needed that, but for the pressing of Ajax, we needed his chips from him in the half spaces and these kind of things. So that was really good. But of course, in the end, it's all about saving, keep the ball out of the net, and he did that at least twice in exceptional manner. So yeah, I'm pretty sure he will either way sleep really well tonight or not at all. I don't know, but both he will enjoy both.
So set for maybe a Premier League start against Wolves at the weekend. The issue is when Alisson comes back, what does Kelleher do then? Can they get him out on loan to a club? He'll need first team football. How long will it be as well before he gets a senior appearance for the Republic of Ireland team? So lots of things that are positive for Queeve and Kelleher this morning. Manchester City guarantee themselves a spot at the top of Group C, despite a goalless draw against Porto. In Group A, Red Bull Salzburg winning 3-1 away to Lokomotiv Moscow, finishing 1-0 between Atletico Madrid and Bayern Munich. Group B, Real Madrid losing 2-0 away to Shakhtar Donetsk. Inter Milan winning 3-2 at Borussia Mönchengladbach. So the top two in Group H meeting tonight at Old Trafford, Manchester United and Paris Saint-Germain. No injury worries for Ole Gunnar Solskjaer. Also the top two in Group E, Sevilla and Chelsea locking horns in Spain. Both matches kicking off at 8 o'clock. 6 games in the Championship. The leaders, Norwich City away to Luton. Pick of the other ties, Nottingham Forest against Watford. An emotional Vera Pauw said that she'll wait to hear from the FAI before deciding on her future. This is after the Republic of Ireland women's team lost 3-1 to Germany at Tallaght Stadium last night. Really, it was the Ukraine match that they blew it in. Although they were very competitive last night, I thought they played very well. So Pauw says she's got a lot to consider before a new deal can be agreed for the 2023 World Cup. Johnny Sexton is now 35. His contract runs until next summer with the IRFU. No contracts are being discussed at the moment with the IRFU and centrally contracted players because of obviously all the issues of COVID. Johnny Sexton hoping to be there on the plane to France at the World Cup in 2023 when he'd be, nearly 38. And he can understand why the IRFU contracts are on hold.
I'm sure the IRFU would have loved to have got their players under contract. You know, I know they would have liked to have started, but they can't because they need to be in a position to know exactly what's going out. You know, and be able to honour those contracts, and we understand that. We've been briefed on it through the Players Association, and it is what it is. You know, it's not ideal from anyone's point of view, but look, it's not a reason why our performances haven't been what they want. They will, you know, that's just excuses, and we don't want to make excuses. But you know, obviously, tough time for a lot of people in the world.
Sexton's going to be around till the Rugby World Cup. This you would say is good news from Andy Farrell's perspective and good news from David Newsom-Forward's perspective, because there's nobody putting their hand up to replace him. And if he wants to go on and he's got the determination to keep going, then there's no one else in town.
But is that not a failing on Irish rugby's shoulders, that there isn't anybody else in town?
You would say, yeah, and you'd wonder who's responsible for that. Like, it does also, I guess, give them a little bit of comfort, the fact that he wants to continue, because there was some speculation that maybe he was going to get to the Lions and say, right, that's it, I'm going to get into my coaching career, which is going to be very interesting as well when Sexton starts coaching. Like, you know, that's that next generation of
Sexton
player.
and O'Gara, Leinster, Munster coaches. When is that going to happen? That can be great.
I mean, Munster would want to think about when they want Rog to come back, because, like, he could end up at Leinster, you know. I wouldn't be terribly surprised to see him ending up at Leinster at some point.
Rog?
Yeah, well, why not?
That'd be a fun gift grub.
Best job in Irish rugby, isn't it? You pick up players.
Yeah, the academy as a conveyor belt.
You know,
and that's what Harry Byrne is interesting, and is Ross Byrne the answer at the moment? Got Harry Byrne. I'm interested to see how he gets on. But will Joey Carberry sort out his fitness issues? You'd hope so. But there is a lack of an understudy. I mean, we were like obviously the riches of having Sexton, O'Gara vying for that position, and back to Humphreys and O'Gara and back to Ward and Campbell. We've always generally had the competition for places for number 10. I think Johnny Sexton is a player that will play every single game until he's just told you can't play anymore. For the Irish rugby team, is like, even I was listening to the press conference yesterday, quite combative, spiky, saying, well, you guys might not think this about the way we're playing right now, but this actually is the way it is. So he has that fight, and even see the way when he was taken off there in France, Johnny Sexton will play to Ronaldo age. You play to 45 if he can. But who are those players going to be coming through that can make him worry for his place? And that's what's needed.
In a way, then this might also be very good news for Harry Byrne, because it means that Sexton will continue to stay at Leinster until the World Cup. Will Ross Byrne want to play second fiddle all the way through to that point, on the assumption that he'll then ascend? Meanwhile, his brother is actually nipping at his heels and could potentially overtake him. So maybe if you're Ross Byrne, do you think, okay, well, now's my opportunity to go and play non-stop for 2 seasons and then come back in time for the World Cup?
Yeah. And that's why the contractual issues are interesting at the moment. And English and French clubs are not exactly, well, especially English clubs are not exactly flush at the moment, although they're getting that bailout from the UK government. So a lot of interesting things contractually to happen next year. Fans back in stadiums. Jack Chambers was on News Talk this morning speaking about getting fans back in. It won't be happening for the All-Irelands. Forget about the finals for the All-Irelands, but possibly for the Six Nations.
The Six Nations, in my view, would be a definite possibility. And the IRFU have been involved in this working group, and so in the first instance we'll have a percentage of fans, so they'll probably run 6 or 8 trials with specific controls in place. The whole principle of this is to ensure that you have a controlled environment and that you adhere to best international practice, so that you manage the entry and exit properly. Like, it'll be a different sporting experience for many fans, but I'm hopeful that we can see some of our sporting fixtures in the spring, whether it's GAA, football or rugby, where we'll be able to have our fans back at games.
That's a real positive. Would you go, guys? I'm a guy who I'll either watch a match behind closed doors or I'll watch an 82,000 or go with the 82,000. I can't be doing 4,000, 6,000, 10,000. I'm not interested.
I think you'll change your tune next year when it's like slowly graduating towards. I'd say you'll be straight there.
Probably, yeah. Probably.
Yeah, it's like that's it, isn't it, though? It's like, oh, no. I mean, I was saying this a couple of weeks ago.
That is like me saying to somebody, would you want a pint? And I can't. Okay, yeah.
Just the one.
Just the one, yeah.
And when was ever... Exactly. Look, I literally stumbled upon an under-16 match recently and was like, I can't leave. This might be the only live sport I see. And I really enjoyed it. Like, whatever, it doesn't really matter. I just want to see some live sport again.
This is moving fast. Like, I'm reading the Daily Mail that next week they're going to have the vaccine rolled out in the UK. This is moving quicker than people think, I think. You know, so that's a real positive regarding sport coming back. And yeah, it's outdoors, isn't it? So that's it's the thing about it is it's railings, it's the congregation outside. Which is the issue, but what Jack Chambers seems to be saying there is that they're going to try and regulate that.
Yeah, everybody stick a mask on. Everybody, don't go to the bathroom.
Don't run into and outside the grounds.
Right, good stuff, John.
Cheers.
Thanks very much for that. It's 8:49 rather. I don't want to give you heart staggers there. It's 8:49 a.m. this morning on OTB AM, and I'm delighted to say Ruth Fahy is with us to talk to us about Ireland's performance against Germany last night. Ruth, the performance last night was actually relatively good compared to what we might have expected against the Germans, but the damage had already been done.
Yeah, exactly, and that's the unfortunate truth coming into it. And we did say that after the Ukraine game, what lay ahead was probably a mountain that was just a little bit too far to climb. Now, in saying that, it was probably their best performance, certainly the best performance I've ever seen from an Irish side against such a top team. Germany, probably the best team in the world at the moment. And just thinking back through the game, it was actually, like I said, it was better than I expected. The first few phases, my heart was slightly concerned. They seemed to kind of dominate down on your Gorman's side, and I thought they were really going to target that area. But apart from that opening 10, and obviously that goal that we all saw, that was a really sick one to take, to be honest. When that went in and the second goal went in, we thought there might be a case of floodgates opening, but it certainly wasn't to be. And the girls fought back, scored that penalty. And let's just be mindful that that's the first goal that Germany have conceded throughout the whole campaign, which is huge. So it was a perfect way to go into the break. And in the second half, you're looking at 45 minutes against a side that just brought on the likes of Marajan, who is one of the top, if not top 3, top 5 players in the world at the moment. But Ireland still managed to outplay them at times. They won 4 corners throughout the game to Germany's 5. That's something that we haven't seen before. When we look at the highlight reel after the game, there were actually genuine chances for Ireland. They went for it. They properly went for it. Obviously, they conceded then the 85th minute. But it was just too little too late, and it was just really heartbreaking to witness the interviews after the game. It was just really tough to take.
So, obviously, the sense of loss is only going to be magnified when the Euros actually happens on our doorstep, and we're going to be sitting watching it. And you hope that there'll be some initiative from the FAI to capitalise on the popularity and the fact that everybody's watching it. So you hope that there's something going on in tandem. In terms of the actual football, what lessons need to be learned, and how quickly do they need to be injected into the team, and what needs to happen next? Does Vera Pauw need to stay, or does Vera Pauw need to go?
Well, I think first of all, Vera Pauw needs to stay. I think this campaign, obviously they didn't qualify, but there's just so many of the positives to bring through. But you're asking, I suppose we asked this question. I've heard this question being asked so many times. The last time Ireland came as close to qualifying for the Euros was back, I think it was 2008. I was on Erasmus in Germany. I remember going to a pub and getting Eurosport on to try and find a match. They were playing Iceland in a playoff. That was 2008. And again, we haven't even gotten to the playoff time, this time. So this is 12 years later, and we're kind of asking the same questions. And while the Irish team is getting better and better, unfortunately what's happening is all the other teams are also getting better. While Ukraine are definitely not a side that I thought we should have lost to, ultimately they've come second in the group, and they're improving, and they'll continue to improve again for the next qualifiers. But the question regarding Vera Pauw, does she need to stay? I think yes. I think it's clear that the players have bought into what she's trying to do. She clearly has a very strong bond with the players and a strong bond with the Irish game in general. She often alludes to her assistant manager, Eileen Gleeson, as kind of being that source of knowledge and expertise in the Women's National League. But she spoke about a holistic plan last night, and that has to include the Women's National League. There has to be more talk about the Women's National League. And finally, I think that might come to the fore, because if you've got players like Ella Malloy, who's 16 and who's still got... Ultimately, she's probably going to go to the WSL, or she's going to go if she can play professional football, but she will be in Ireland for the next 2 years. If you're assuming she wants to stay and finish school, or the likes of Anya Gorman, who Vera Pauw obviously favours and she wants her to play. So players like that, or Jamie Finn, who started last night, plays for Shelburne. I mean, you need to look after those players. So how are they going to be looked after? And it can't just be a case of, they're going to play with boys. There's this theme that they have to play with boys, but should it not be a case where what they're playing in is good enough and they don't have to play with boys? Obviously, they're looking at different ways to improve it. But yeah, it'd be great to have Vera to stay. But it'd be great to have an awful lot of attention given to our own domestic league, which is slowly stagnating as well.
Okay, so you don't sound that confident about there being an automatic improvement in the team's fortunes into the future, unless these things are addressed.
Well, yeah, of course they have to be addressed, and there will be a debrief, and everyone will run through that in great detail. But there was talk last night of Well, no, there was a statement that Ireland can qualify for or will be at the Women's World Cup in 2023 in Australia, New Zealand, which would be incredible. But and emotions were running quite high. But that is a huge task, because you're looking at the World Cup where in 2019 I think there were 24 teams, and that will be expanded to 32 in 2023. Back in 2019, 8 teams from Europe qualified. We don't know how many there will be in 2023 yet. You would assume there might be 10 or so, if not more. But those 8 teams, like we're talking, in Europe, we've got England, the Dutch, Norway, Germany, Sweden, Iceland, Spain, Italy. They're 8 teams that are probably going to qualify. And then you're battling it out the likes of Switzerland, a fabulous team, Denmark, Russia, Belgium, Wales, Scotland. Ireland could be up there. Absolutely could be up there. We've taken points off all those sides before, but it's a very complex, difficult task. And when you think about our last qualifying group, we had Norway and we had the Dutch, and that is a massive, massive ask. So you have to give everything. You have to sit down and plan everything to minute detail, and you have to throw resources in behind us. It's already been done. It's come on hugely, and a huge credit since 2017 and that strike. The response has been amazing, and the players give testament to that. But there just has to be more, and there is room for more. It's not a huge ask, and there's not huge inroads to make. Just needs more. There's always going to need to be more until you get that qualifying point, unfortunately. But yeah.
The point that you make about the Women's National League here, and if you look back and you trace back the point where football in Ireland goes away from being successful and really hopeful about its future, it's the bit where the League of Ireland starts to become neglected and our best players all start to go to England. That's always going to be the case, that the biggest leagues will always soak up your best talent, but it's the fact that we didn't pay attention to the league and to the facilities and to the structures of the league and the governance of the league and all that kind of stuff, that if you went back 40, 50 years, you would say, look, if your international team is going to be successful over a long period of time, you need a domestic league that works and that makes sense. There's the opportunity now for the women's game to learn from that lesson and to say, OK, and for the FAI particularly to say a strong women's domestic league is going to be the bedrock of all of the structures that we put in place, so that if you're a kid, you're associated with a club, or you're going in that pathway to a club. Are we doing that? Is that part of the FAI's thinking?
It doesn't appear to be so at the moment from what I have seen and heard over the past, let's say 2 or 3 years, the duration of that campaign. Has it improved? Yes. There's no point pummeling and not giving credit where credit is due. There is attention being given to the Women's National League, but is there focus, and is it a bedrock or a foundation of the plan? I definitely don't think it was. I could be wrong, and maybe I just haven't seen it, or it hasn't been visible. I don't get the feeling that it was. No, I wouldn't. There's no evidence to me that it was. Will it be now going forward? Absolutely has to be, and I think those within the senior national team staff will hold their hands up and support that as well, because the fact is, even if the best players want to go, often they won't go immediately. They might go after college. They might go in their mid-20s. So they have to be at a certain level to go. And if the league here is flourishing and they're leaving in a really strong S&C in place, they're training at an appropriate number of times a week. The league is competitive. We've got a couple of teams who've got, big physical, close games week in, week out. You're going to produce those players and have them primed to go, so there's not too much of a gap to make when they do progress into that professional side. But was the Women's National League source of focus as part of that development plan of that 2 years? No, I think the focus was probably purely on it didn't need to be, because they had enough there, like in that starting 11 last night, aside from Anya O'Gorman, the rest are all playing professionally. Amber Barrett, that came on, is playing professionally. Ella Malloy, that came on, is not. So there's just, I don't think the attention was there. Will it be now? It has to be. It has to be. And the Women's National League is coming under that focus now. People are asking about it. Where is it at? We're coming up to a 10-year anniversary of its inception back in 2011. So where is it at now? How far has it come? That's the big question, and I'd like to see that analysed and talked about and discussed, and I'd love to see the coaches and the managers come in and get involved in that discussion as well over the next couple of months.
So is your sense that we almost have a golden generation playing football for Ireland at the moment, and there is an element of fortune about having these unbelievable talents playing for the team, that actually removing that luck over the next couple of years and decades and actually having more of a system is the way to go and is obviously a necessary step.
Yeah, having a system is absolutely the way to go. You're exactly golden generation. Look, we've got Denise O'Sullivan, Katie McCabe, even Grace Maloney in goal. Rihanna, Jared up front. They're at the kind of 25, 26-year-old age. They would have been in and around that team, maybe a little bit younger, who got so far in the under-17 World Cup back in 2010. They're getting older, unfortunately. Like, they're not at a stage now where in 2 or 3 years' time, I don't think they'll have progressed beyond their peak or anything like that. But you're looking, if the World Cup doesn't happen, you're looking beyond that in 4 years' time. Denise O'Sullivan will be 30 years old. I'm sure she'll be even a better player, but she'll be a different player. And what we have right now is we have an incredible talent and a pool there, and that golden generation. And when they spoke about it in the analysis after the game, we don't want to see those players doing the analysis and looking back and wanting better for the youth who are coming through. It has to be done now, and the opportunities are there, the talent is there, but just shifting that focus in a more effective way, just getting some money in and resources in and doing it right will reap massive benefits, and everybody knows it.
In terms of PAO's coaching, did you see a gradual improvement as the campaign went on, where the team was more cohesive, that there were better individual performances?
Yes, and I'm purely saying that immediately because I watched Ireland versus Germany last night, and there were some chances created. They scored a penalty, they had 4 corners, the pass, the completed pass rate was up close to 300. Wouldn't have seen that before. And when they played Germany, I know it was away in the previous tie, they were just completely outplayed. While they were clearly outplayed last night, there were moments of competitiveness, and it was different and it was better. Now, in saying that, the Ukraine and the Greece matches where they dropped points were in the latter stages of the campaign. Especially the Ukraine game. They beat them 3-2 at home. They were clearly better, and you kind of expect them to kick on. And then when after that game, I thought, there's no way Ireland will lose to Ukraine. I had kind of written the script nearly at that point when they beat Ukraine at home 3-2. They showed great character. They were 2-0 up, it came to 2-2. They went back to win 3-2, and I was like, this is a momentum shift, because sometimes that we hadn't seen that before from an Irish side. So maybe that's in terms of performances. I thought the players, I didn't think they dipped in confidence or anything like that as the campaign progressed. But potentially a psychological thing that they haven't quite mastered yet. But there's no more time to wait to master those little moments. And this experience will stand to all that team, and we won't lose this team. They're going to be together as a cohesive unit for the next campaign as well. But yeah, it got better, but God, just wasn't enough.
Yeah, and I think as well, the progression to the second Ukraine game, there was an element of freakishness about what happened on that particular afternoon, in fairness. Just one final one for me on it then. In terms of the style of play that this team is playing, is this the brand that Ireland need to stick to regardless of the manager over the next little while? Does it suit this type of player? Does it suit the type of player that Ireland is producing, the Vera PAO style of play?
Yeah, it's a very good question. I think it does. When I compare this campaign to the last campaign under Colin Bell, there wasn't really a brand. I think there was very much a developmental process in place where he focused on not conceding. So there was no clear brand. We didn't know what way they wanted to play. In this campaign, Vera spoke from the very beginning that she, held her hand up, said, we've one of the best players in the world here in this team. We can play football. We can execute on the counter. We can be clinical. We're good enough to hold on to the ball. I didn't see that enough. You can tell, the brand that she wants to play, but I didn't see that enough throughout the campaign. Vera will say she just needs another campaign under her belt, which I would fully agree with. I think she'll bring that forward, obviously, into the next one. I think the brand of football that she's trying to play does suit the players. She probably needs more time, but they're definitely capable to execute it. And I agree. I think it suits him, yeah.
All right, Ruth, we've got to leave it there. Good stuff. Thanks a million for joining us this morning.
Thanks a million, guys. Have a great day. Bye.
You too. It's Ruth Fahy there giving us some thoughts on Ireland's 3-1 defeat and the end of their campaign to qualify for the Euros, which are in England next year, unfortunately. 4 minutes past 9 this morning. I want to tell you what's coming up on OTB Sports Radio today. An exclusive first listen at 12 noon. It's episode 3 of the Bernard Brogan podcast, and the guest is the reigning Open champion, Shane Lowry. So the only place you can hear that today at 12 o'clock, the first place you can hear that today at 12 o'clock is episode 3 of the Bernard Brogan podcast on OTB Sports Radio. So just tell your Alexa or Google Home or whatever it is that you're using, play OTB Sports Radio at high noon, and it's Bernard Brogan and Shane Lowry. OTB Gold from 1, Catherine Switzer. Our Legends interview, John Barnes at 3. Our retro panel is leaders, captains and managers with Kenny Cunningham, Mark Poland and Michael Foley. Dr. Harry Edwards talking about O.J. Simpson from 6. And then live tonight, the football show with Don McDonald, Formula 1 with Leo Nolte and Ronan O'Gara on Wednesday night rugby. We are previewing the All-Ireland football semi-finals with Mickey Quinn and Kevin Walsh next. Keep an eye out here for a sneak preview of episode 3 of the Bernard Brogan podcast with Shane Lowry.
OTB AM on OTB Sports Radio, Ireland's first and only sports radio station.
The OTB Brief. Everything you need to know about sport every morning. Need to get on top of the day's sports news? Well, the OTB Brief is the only sports update you'll need every morning. With all the breaking stories, post-match reaction.
I always look about, teams who've won a league, their mindsets, their body language, their hunger, desire. And I see that so much in this Liverpool team.
And the best bits from off the ball, all in a 10-minute podcast.
Rory McIlroy's game has changed a lot.
The OTB Brief. Weekday mornings from 7:20 a.m. on OTB Sports Radio. Listen on the OTB Sports app.
How have you found, have you been watching keeping an eye on the 2020 Championship this year?
Oh, geez, yeah. See, it's great. It's great for us we're in America. We get the matches in the mornings, you know what I mean? So my goal, it's funny, right? So my goal every week is obviously there's matches on a Saturday and Sunday. And my goal every week is to play well on Thursday and Friday so I can get a late tea time on Saturday and Sunday so I can watch the GA in the mornings. It's nothing to do with doing well in the tournament. But yeah, it's been for the year that's in it's been pretty good. Obviously I think the last couple of weekends have been extraordinary. When you see what the GA does to some people, and I think last weekend especially, or the weekend before last, the football provincial finals. Obviously the Dubs beat Meath. That was a kind of a given. But when you see what it meant to the Cavan people to beat Donegal, and what it meant to Tipperary to beat Cork and to win that, and it's just incredible what it does. And obviously, look, the hurling's been brilliant as well. So yeah, I love it. Like I have GA going and I have the matches on in the house all the time. We rent houses, so I've got a bit of a dodgy box as well that I hook up to the TV and I get the games on. And so everything on my Thursday and Friday revolves around what time the games are on at the weekend.
Follow the leader, the Mitsubishi Outlander PHEV, the world's best-selling plug-in hybrid, is now available with 0% finance and a free home charge point worth €800. Leading the charge in plug-in hybrid technology, the Mitsubishi Outlander PHEV. Book a test drive at your local dealer today. Mitsubishi, drive your ambition. Terms and conditions apply. See mitsubishimotors.ie. Lending criteria applies. This is a hire purchase agreement provided by Bank of Ireland Finance.
OTB AM.
With Gillette, your most supported our frontline workers this Movember.
Yeah, so you've seen a sneak preview there in the ad break of the latest episode of the Bernard Brogan podcast. Shane Lowry talking about his dodgy box with Bernard this week. It's all thanks to Super Value, proud sponsor of the 2020 Football Championship. Talks Tiger and the Masters, growing up in Clara, Offaly GA legacy, playing at your peak, and of course his remarkable triumph at the Open. Exclusive first listen today at 12 noon on OTB Sports Radio, and you can get the podcast an hour later on our podcast network. Just subscribe to OTB GAA on the OTB Sports app. That's the best place for that. The other episodes, Ty Kennelly, Tommy Bowe, and next Wednesday Jack McCaffrey joins Bernard, so they can address those rumours that are sweeping like wildfire on social media at the moment about his participation for the Dubs. Now, I'm delighted to say we've got Kevin Walsh and Mickey Quinn with us to preview the weekend's actions. Kevin, I might start with you. You've got a new book out. It's called The Invisible Game. Can you tell us a bit about it?
It's just I suppose looking maybe outside the ordinary skills that have been coaches and stuff like that. So it's just looking a bit deep in, really, to be honest with you. The coaching side of it, I suppose, different type of personalities that you want to come across, and it's just, I suppose, it's about it's about the experience over the last 10 years and what we've learned, and maybe the analysis of stuff and how to get into stuff a little bit deeper, and just to get the coaching and learnings going on as much as possible, and just throwing a few ideas out there, really.
Do you feel like it's something that we don't get enough of in our coverage of Gaelic games and in the conversations around Gaelic games?
I do, absolutely. I think, look, I suppose the one of the biggest things that we probably fail to see is who's impacting games, and it's not, you don't have to be on the ball all the time to impact games. So there's a huge amount of work done if it's done correctly, covering different spaces, getting into areas in attack and defence there that can have a massive impact, maybe one or two passes down the line. So we always probably hit at the things that look good and the flashy points, but it's probably the thousand unseen things that can make a team far better by players doing the simple stuff correct. But I suppose it's fair to players. Sometimes we expect those things to be done, but I do feel they're neglected in coaching, absolutely, and it just makes players a bigger impact for a team.
Okay, well, if anybody's interested in this, where can they get the book?
Excuse me?
If anybody's interested in this, where can they get their hands on a copy of the book?
Yeah, just at the minute it's out on Amazon. It'll be hitting the shops probably January, February. But at the minute, I suppose we'd hope to get in the shops for Christmas. But with the COVID situation and everything else, we just released on Amazon at the minute, and we'll be hitting the shops in January, hopefully.
No, that's a fair point. Mickey, we've obviously talked a good bit about the analysis of the games with you actually analysing games, but it's interesting that this is something I think that you're drawn to as well. The quality of conversation around why teams are winning, how teams are winning. That's something you feel we could all just do a little bit better on, I suspect, as well.
Definitely, yeah. When you see Dublin and the level that they're after bringing things to, make no mistake, the work they're going to do in Cavan will be second to none in comparison to anyone else. The homework they do on teams is probably one of the reasons why they're at the level. They take no one for granted, and it was fairly obvious against me too that the switch was turned, and you hear different stories about players arriving for training early in Dublin and they're sitting down at laptops an hour or 2 hours beforehand, going through matchups, watching individual edits, all that kind of stuff. It's I suppose it's game smarts and willingness to improve the mental side of the game, and probably the game that it's not trained on the field. That's what Kevin's talking about a lot of it, that you kind of have to go from the theory or the video analysis and try and transfer it to the pitch. And I suppose that's the coaching side of things. That's the difficult part, and to transfer that knowledge to the players. So it's everyone's mad keen to try and come up with some way to try and break down the dubs, and at the moment it's trying to get that master plan in place and have the players to execute it.
Okay, well, look, we'll come back to the Cavan-Dublin game and maybe through the prism of the Donegal game in a while. But I want to start by talking about Mayo. And Kevin, I'm very interested in you've obviously come up against Mayo over the last number of years. You've seen them firsthand. You've done that level of work that Mickey's talking about there. Where have Mayo actually been good this year? Have they surprised you in any way? Are they getting back to a level where they can contend against Dublin?
Yeah, I was on your programme there a few weeks ago, and I would have said that even after a Connacht final, it would still be hard to know where this Mayo team are, because I suppose, look at the league is long over, new faces have come in, but there's huge, I suppose there's huge questions. There's definitely a huge change in Mayo in personnel. So, if you look at what would have been the Warriors, I call them down over the year, like the likes of, Boyle, Harrison, Parsons, would say Vaughan, Andy Moore, and Higgins hasn't played much at all. He's only appeared for a few minutes this season, and Shane O'Shea. So all those would be warrior-type players. And, that while Mayo have a lot of changes there, it's really hard to know where they are at the minute. Now, they looked really, really good in Galway in the league. And then I suppose Galway completely tightened up in the second game, where they saw that all-out attack wasn't going to work because you left to open the back. So, and then Mayo struggled a bit in the second half. They played quite well against Galway in the first half, probably should be more up, but then ends up hanging on. So it's really hard to know where they are. I suppose it's the young fellas like Conroy, young Moran as well. Carr only played last year. We haven't seen much of him this year. So I'm not even so sure that James Horton actually knows his best team, which might be a little problem. But, he's probably looking now and saying, well, we have a great chance to get to another final. But they really have to be at their best to win this one.
What, in your opinion, Kevin, underpinned how Mayo went about those great All-Ireland finals of the last 5 years or so? Was there a particular theme that ran through it that James Horan can bring to the table again this year?
Yeah, look at it. They were, I've named the Warriors there and those guys who just, the ferocious work rate. They were continuously running off the shoulder. So, in particular against teams that wouldn't be awfully well set up, they would certainly be cutting down the middle 3 lanes. I spoke of the lanes before, and those middle 3 lanes Mayo would have done serious damage. I do think they come unstuck when those lanes are blocked up on them, and Tipperary would have been really good in the last game against Cork for blocking up those channels. So I'd say they'll probably a little bit of a template which worked against Cork, but they probably won't be straying too much from it, because I think Mayo do struggle to break down when people get well set up. So that was probably one of the biggest things that Mayo done really well. And I suppose even when they played Dubliners were so good and so athletic, but they would sometimes have left the middle open with Mayo. So they had seriously good games because they were both attacking and both making mistakes, but both were high intensity. And I think if Mayo's intensity is brought down, I think they struggle at times to when they're stopped up. They look a little bit clueless at that point. But look at the new players. It'll be interesting to see what happens on Sunday.
Yeah, Mickey, I think a lot of people are giving Tipperary a good shout on Sunday. Just that Mayo sometimes can struggle against opponents that they don't consider to be as worthy as Dublin, say.
Yeah, I think one of the things with Tipperary is that the firepower, and this is their second All-Ireland final in, I don't know, is it 5 or 6 years ago when they got to All-Ireland semi-finals. So, like with Michael Quinlivan and Conor Sweeney up front, they just offer something there that 2 calibre forwards that get starting on any and probably an unassuming player is Brian Fox. And what he offers them, I don't know, did he start a corner forward the last day, and he just has that freedom to read the game and that game smarts to get around, whether he's playing a sweeper or even picking up a dangerous player for the opposition. And the matchups are going to be really interesting. Who's going to match up with Colin O'Riordan? Paddy Durkin, Colin O'Riordan, probably fitness-wise and speed-wise well matched, but O'Riordan will probably have him in the air. So maybe Diarmuid O'Connor, someone like that. Then Aidan O'Shea, where is he going to play? Is he going to drift in and out from the full forward line? And that's probably where Tipperary might become unstuck. A player like Aidan, what he offers in the full forward line, he'll force teams to drop off and sit in front, and then they have the option of kicking long range points. So I think getting those matchups right, as most managers would tell you, between your own kickouts and opposition kickouts, and then getting your correct matchups, that goes a long way to your game plan running smoothly.
What do you think, Kevin, on that exact point in terms of Tipperary's specific threats that Mickey outlined there, and how that can actually target the specific weaknesses that Mayo sometimes expose?
I think what Mickey's saying there, I think it might actually suit Tipperary. I don't think they'll mind dropping somebody back if Aidan O'Shea goes inside. I do think if he's crowded out, he will struggle. I think, as Mickey has said, the calibre up front, in particular of the two guys, Sweeney and Quinlivan, they're as good as what's in the whole country. And I think Tipperary will be quite happy to leave space up front for those two guys. As I said, Fox is a real hard worker. The midfield, they may have an edge out there. So I do think it won't bother them if they have to come back and block up those channels, because a quick transition and those two boys up front, they're as lethal as the game is at the minute. And I think, even though they struggled by Limerick, it took a brilliant score to stay in the match. I think the confidence that came out of that, in particular the last one, Tipperary do go on confidence, and they couldn't come into it in a better way. But I just think they will set up that way. I think they leave as much space for the two boys up front. They have hard workers on both wings, and a quick transition, and that they will be certainly a little bit afraid of what Aidan O'Shea or anybody else brings into the full forward line. I think they'll try and crowd it out.
Mickey, what would you do if you were Michael Quinlivan on Sunday and you had Paddy Durcan on you and he was running the opposite way consistently? How do you counteract that?
Yeah, I think every football team is playing it now, and every Gaelic footballer needs to be able to play in multiple positions. You look at the Dubs, you look at Mayo, Aidan O'Shea, Conor Callaghan, these calibre players, and even Quinlivan's doing it himself. He started out as an inside forward. He's wearing 11 on his back. It's just rotation. If your man marker is bombing up the field, Paddy Durcan loves to go, pull him in deep to the goals, away from the threat that's up the field. So pull him in deep. He mightn't want to be in there. So you got to keep changing things up. You look where Quinlivan popped up with his scores at the weekend. Probably let the play go past a little bit, sat on the outside, and then when it went past, he came on late. He can play it that way, or he can play similar to what Sweeney's doing, is sitting inside, winning the ball out in front of his man and trying to get a shot off quickly. So, and at the end of the day, what Sweeney and Quinlivan have in comparison to other forwards is they're big men. They can take their marks. They can win high balls. They're a threat for goals from high balls, but they're also lightning quick. So, for the likes of those guys, rotating and keeping defenders on their toes is going to be the main thing. But then, as what Kevin said, you want to keep those guys up closer to goal. You don't want those guys doing loads of donkey work coming back and tracking players. You want them to be fresh when the ball does come on the transition, that they can really capitalise.
Kevin, just final word on this Mayo team. Do you actually see this team winning in All-Ireland at any point before the expiration of certain players like Aidan O'Shea and Lee Keegan? Do you think that they will get their hands on an All-Ireland medal before it's all said and done?
No, it's a really difficult question on the basis that the team has changed. I've outlined a lot of players who have actually gone, and I think they've gone unnoticed a lot without, it hasn't been driven out there by the media. So it's kind of a new team, and I suppose one huge thing that's stopping that, giving a clear answer, is that Dublin are there, and they seem to be as strong as ever. And to win All Ireland, they're going to have to be Dublin in Croke Park, which is another issue. And to say that they will win All Ireland, it's hard to say, to be honest. This weekend will tell a lot, but there is a lot of new players there. I just feel there's a lot of talk, there'll be a lot of pressure as well to win it if they get there. There's actually a lot of pressure on this weekend, because you've mentioned the fact that they're carrying a hot favourite tag now, and this Tipperary team are no mugs, and so they're going to have to rise themselves massively for this game, and then rise it again, and that'll be in Croke Park if they can play the weekend. So at the minute, are they ready for this weekend? I haven't seen enough to say that they are to beat Dublin, and it's going to be hard to beat Tip.
How big a factor is that Croke Park factor when you are going up against the Dubs? Obviously, you guys would have had to go up against the Hill in 2018.
I look at it. It is a big factor, and it's something I'll have talked about in the book, because I would have said that before even with the league final back in 2018. Look at it. It's like this. If you're home, you're home, and I think you see a lot of games that goes to the home advantage. So it is home, and don't get away from that. I suppose when I was playing myself, home for Dublin was Parnell Park, and they came into Croke Park with the rest of the teams as they came in. So things have changed the last number of years because of crowds and stuff. So, but familiarity like that is definitely worth a few points to you. So that's probably, if you even look at the bookie prices, you'll find that Dublin away from home against the same opposition will be a far different price as they are at home. So what's the reason for that? And again, I'm not as smart as actuaries, but they put that together. So I suppose the facts say that it is an advantage. So it is something that's worth a few points, and that has got to be got over to win All Ireland now as well.
Is that fair?
Excuse me?
Is that fair?
Look at it, it's fair for getting crowds into the ground, and I can understand, the massive amounts. But I would say you're looking at semi-final stages for the last number of years, and you're not getting anything over 50,000. So if a home team were in Croke Park, I would say what would be fair might be to bring it to Páirc Uí Chaoimh or something like that. So it is a semi-final, and it will take the crowds as required. So is it fair? I suppose home advantage is an advantage, so it's probably not as fair as I'd like it to be.
Yeah, I think that's the point. You said it very well. Home is home, and the Dubs are home in the All-Ireland semi-final every year that they win Leinster. It's a nice little handy added bonus for them, and maybe we should be having that conversation in the downtime, and actually that might be one of the things that we could change post-COVID. Mickey, you had your 5-point plan for how Meath would be able to beat the Dubs, and I don't think they did any of the 5 points ultimately. They played well for about 30 seconds, and they were a disaster after that. Can Cavan do something different? What will Cavan bring that will be different?
Yeah, I probably sat down on that Saturday evening keen to look at those few things and start looking at them really in detail for the first half and give up after that. You know, I think one thing that Cavan are going to bring that you can see it from the Ulster Championship is that willingness to take risk, and you know, their psyche that they're not afraid. They've been behind 10 points, 7 points, 8 points. The games have been stacked against them, but they always manage to keep coming back and keep coming back. So that side of things where you see Meath might have dropped their heads, and the psychology side of things that the confidence drained out of them, that Cavan might be able to last longer than previous teams so far this year with Dublin. You know, the things that they need to work on, their poor starts. You just can't afford to offer Dublin a 10-point head start at half-time like they did against Monaghan and Down. So that's something that, you know, they worked on against Donegal, and they started really well. Stopping a running game was an area that I pointed out that looked like they were in bother with. But against Donegal, again, they shored up the middle three channels that Kevin mentioned, and made Donegal kind of come through there, which there was full of numbers and got huge turnovers. I think Donegal had 47 attacks in that game, 12 scores, I think 9 shots off target, and 26 of those attacks ended up negative turnovers. So that was 26 attacks that came straight back up that Cavan got. To get that kind of joy against Donegal, it's something that we wouldn't have expected, and to get anywhere near that against Dublin, that's what they want. They want to force turnover. So a few points, their own kickouts, managing their own kickouts is going to be huge. Everyone talks about, you know, go long against the Dubs to have Thomas Galligan, Gerard Kieran at midfield. If you're going to go long against Dublin, it's got to be long and quick to a mismatch. But Dublin are really cute at slowing down those kickouts or getting numbers to the breaking ball. So I think Galligan in goals is going to play a key role, and we've seen Brodie for Laois do it also, that Dublin almost let the keeper come out and they try and send him down a channel and turn him over. But if the likes of Raymond Galligan can give a ball out short and somehow get onto the back of it and win it back and drive at Dublin, that's going to be an extra man going forward that I think Cavan can utilise. But I think the thing with them is that you have to keep mixing up your game plan and changing from one to the other, short kickouts, long kickouts, and keep changing things. And I suppose that's the thing against Dublin, that you try and perfect one game plan, and if it goes out the window after 5-10 minutes, then you have to have plan B, plan C, and you know, I'm not sure if many teams in the country can even offer that.
Yeah. Kevin Walsh, what's that actually like to prepare for the Dubs and have your plan B and C? It's the old Mike Tyson line about having a plan until you get a punch in the mouth.
Yeah, look, it's going to be a massive task for Cavan in particular. You know, I'd have to say, just on the Cavan side, Cavan were absolutely superb against Donegal. I thought the way they fought was unreal. You mentioned early on about maybe where Mayo might take a team for granted or whatever it is. I think Cavan are slightly the same way. And if you look, you know, they struggled with Antrim. They came back late against Down. But, you know, if you're to look at the Donegal game with the 2 black cards, and I think we were talking about impacting games, things that impact games, you know, that wasn't even spoke about. The 2 black cards, for me, were very dubious. And, you know, for that to happen and for them to fight the way they fought and to win that game like they won it, showed a massive spirit. I suppose the advantage of that was the pitch would be far narrower. The sidelines were almost touching the stands up there. So I think that plan A, B or C, when the Dubs get the massive amount of space, Cavan will probably struggle with it, to be honest. And I think they'll work their boots off. But, you know, Dublin just have those extra gears with all the different type of players they have. And I know we can have all the plans, A, B, C and D, but as Aidan O'Brien would always, you look at Aidan O'Brien, he has to have a Group 1 horse to win the Derby. Like Group 2, he doesn't win it. So you put as many plans to get the best out of your players that you can for that situation. And it's just going to be, it's really hard. You can try a number of things with Dublin, but the running game in Croke Park is wide open. It'll be really, really tough. I think Cavan will bring it to half time and stuff where but the pace will probably catch them out at that point. But yeah, look, it's really difficult. Dublin are the seasoned team completely. They know how to win these matches, so very, very hard to see Cavan turn them over.
Yeah, no, that's fair enough. Are you both predicting ultimately a Mayo Dublin final, or do I sense that, Kevin, you're actually going for Tipperary to win that game?
I think that's going to be a close game. Mayo have the experience, the Division 1 experience, but they also have got relegated. So they've probably got relegated on the back of maybe change of personnel. So it's the personnel to see are they nested together well enough. They have a lot of young lads, and it's great to see that the team is trying to evolve. But that Tipperary side, we come up against them in 2016, and we got a lot of flack for our performances in it. But I have to give credit to Liam Kearns and Tipperary. They were rightly up for that. And I remember I think we missed about 1-4 at the very start, and then we were very poor after that. Confidence drained out, and Tipperary they really were really very, very good, and the big players stood up. So again, they're capable of doing that when they get confidence. And I watched the semi-final against Mayo the following game, and I think Mayo had only 3 points scored in 30 minutes, and I think the corner-back was dispossessed on the sideline, and Mayo had no chances at all in the first 30 minutes where they really shut them out, and that kind of a game plan could upset Mayo again. So I wouldn't say that Tipperary haven't got a great chance.
Okay, all right, look, we're actually out of time, but great stuff this morning. My thanks to Mickey Quinn and to Kevin Walsh for joining us. You can get Kevin's new book, The Invisible Game, out on Amazon now. OTB AM live weekday mornings from 7:30 with thanks to Gillette. Good morning. Start with Gillette, giving you the confidence to tackle the day ahead. You can listen to us as just a radio show if you want on OTB Sports Radio, and you can get that on your smart speaker. And I know loads of you are getting smart speakers under the Christmas tree this Christmas as well. So just tell Alexa to play OTB Sports Radio, and away you go. Tomorrow, Gordon Darcy, Champions League review, GA build-up as we look forward to the All-Ireland semi-finals this weekend. And Don McLean's going to join us to talk to us about his new book. Right now, we're going to hear from the former Irish footballer and Premier League star Kevin Doyle, talking about brain injuries and concussions in football.
Did you in the States at any stage pass a test and then feel symptoms afterwards when you were back in the field?
Yeah, in my very last professional game against LA Galaxy, I got a ball to the head. Someone, it was actually Ashley Cole. He went to clear a ball, half volleyed it off my head from about 5 yards away, and down getting treatment and got the assessment from the doctor and physio, and at the time for those couple of minutes I felt fine, even though I think I was after being, I think I'd been knocked out for a second or two, but didn't own up to them, and did feel fine in the assessment and was able to answer all their questions and no problem. But then 5 minutes later, 10 minutes later, I just remember standing on the pitch and not really being, just feeling not right, not really being 100% sure. I think I described it as like I was looking down on myself playing from above. So a weird feeling, and it's just one of the symptoms, I suppose, of concussion as it was at the time. But I didn't get that initially. It took 5 or 10 minutes before that all started to become apparent, and then then I think they started to notice I wanted to try, but I walked off. I just walked off and told them, and then walked off the pitch at that stage.
Interesting. So that exposes the limitations of that quick question test immediately after the incident.
Yeah, I think, listen, if it's a really obvious incident, you see someone get a bad bang on the head and they're down to have to get treatment, I think in that case you go, you know what, to be safe, we should take someone off. It doesn't happen every game. No. It might happen to someone once a season. And if it's only once a season, you get a bad bang to the head, just, for me, that would be a case of come off. It's easy for me to say that now I'm retired and I've experienced that, but it's not like it'd be happening to you every week. It's bad bangs to the head. It's something that happened to David Luiz on Saturday. That happens once a season, maybe to him. When was the last time you saw him bandaged up with blood pouring out of his head? Very rarely, and less so in football now, becoming a lot less of an aerial battle, even since I've retired. So it should become less of a problem. So when it does happen, then it shouldn't be a big deal that you do take someone off. I wouldn't be anything for banning heading or any of that side of things. I just think listen, use common sense. Doctors are, and that doctor was following the protocol and David Luiz passed the test, but I think it should be a bit more common sense used than that.
Yeah. And to be fair, as you say, that's not really the issue. You know, when Tony Cascarino is saying he's fearful of the future, or when we're talking about the higher likelihood of players suffering with dementia in their later years, that's not down to one-off incidents. That's the repeated nature of heading. So with you, did the issue start as a result of one particularly bad incident, or was it just a build-up and it came out of nowhere?
No, I would say it's a build-up over time. I just noticed in my last year, so I got a few different bangs to the head, one in pre-season. I remember it was this really like nothing collision with a goalkeeper. I think he came to catch it from a corner or a crossing or whatever, and I just challenged him in the air and I barely got a bang, and I was concussed after it, and I thought that's like the easiest I've ever been concussed.
And how often had you been concussed up until that point across your career?
You know what, I don't know, I suppose a handful of times. You know, it wasn't you know,
oh my God, I've been concussed. I need to remember this. Yeah.
You know, it wasn't a thing. You get a bang to a head in a game, you feel like crap, and you go out and train on Monday. You know, it wasn't down as he's had a concussion and he's had a. Whereas the first time I noticed, I suppose, is only right near the end of my career, and now it's obviously become a lot more thing. It wasn't a thing. It wasn't noted like an injury. It wasn't an issue. The first time I really noticed it was in America, and players would sit out with concussion. I was like, strange, you know, like. To me, it was, okay, I feel better a day later, and you go back and train, and you go out and header a million balls and train, and that's the side of it that doesn't happen now. And I think we are, to be honest, I think everyone is on top of it. I think everyone uses common sense and everyone does sit out. So the stuff that maybe I would be worried about and Tony Cascarino would be worried about from our careers and going past, I don't think that happens now. I think now, you know what, the stupid stuff I would have done, I would have had a bang in the head on a Saturday, shouldn't have played, should have come off, and then I'd be training Monday, and whatever about getting the concussion, you get a concussion. But what compounds it, what makes it worse, is when you're out and training then and you header 50 balls while your brain is still bruised, still trying to heal, you're battering away at something that hasn't healed. And that's when you do, from my knowledge and from what I've been told, that's when you start to do the damage. It's not the actual, main concussion, or concussion obviously is not great, but then repeatedly hurting yourself while still trying to heal, while your head is still bruised. So that has been pretty much, from what I can see and from what I know, taken out of the game. I think when someone gets in concussion, they sit out, they wait. It could be 2 weeks, 3 weeks. They have to pass tests before they come back. That would not have been the case for Tony Cascarino. It wouldn't have been the case for me. You'd go into training and you'd stupidly, you'd do cross and finishing. Nearly at the end of every training session, you could header 25, 30 balls. I don't think that happens now. That's one thing I would say. Listen, heading isn't in the game near as much, but I loved heading. Without heading, I wouldn't have half the career I had. It's an important skill. It's something that is a skill. So I hate it when I hear people say it should be banned from the game, but I just think managed better. You probably shouldn't be going at the end of training session doing crossing and finishing for half an hour or whatever. Practice your technique once or twice, get a good technique or whatever it might be. There's different training aids out there now. There's one Irish company have one out there, but there's different ways of learning how to head the ball. You don't need to be sillily going out and heading 50 balls. Kids don't need to be heading it near as much, and it isn't the case now. It definitely has improved massively over the last 2 years. The style of football, how kids are helping train my kids under 19. It's all passing, it's all drills, it's all nice football, and that same aerial contact isn't there. The same amount of need to head a ball isn't there. So naturally, it's moving out of the game, but I wouldn't like to take it fully out of it, because as I said, without it, I wouldn't have had the career I had.
And when you say, knocks that you would have had across your career, are they generally like an elbow to a head or a clash of heads, as opposed to, head? I don't know, occasionally, probably not at your level to be fair, but you might head the ball in the wrong place and it's come down from a height and you can be seeing stars.
Yeah, bits of everything. I've one on my Instagram of Sean St. Ledger shoving me into the Preston goalie and nearly getting decapitated. It's a good picture, actually. Someone got it. Shot. But there's so many different ways. And then I would have said I was knocked out. I'm knocked unconscious in that game. And I was probably out for a good bit. And I played on, and I flew home and played for Ireland a few days later. So, just instances like that. But yeah, big million things. And then if you're ever standing on a wall and if you ever get a ball at whatever speed and you have to stand in the wall and take it on the head to clear it, stuff like that happens, and all that stuff can bring. I don't know if people who would know of heading the ball, if you head it correctly on your forward, good technique, it usually feels fine. And that feeling when you don't and you get it on the top of your head and you feel quite dazed. I suppose the best way I can explain it. But yeah, concussions. You're playing on a hard ground. You go up high and you come down on your back and you bang your head. I was concussed from trying to do a bicycle kick in training. I don't know what I was trying to do. I got concussed from trying to do a bicycle kick in training one day. Just from how I landed, I banged my head on the ground. So listen, there's just so many different ways. obviously the most obvious one. You're going up to challenge for me as centre half, and you're getting an elbow in the head. But that was probably the least place I would have got bangs to the head. It was more the innocuous run of the mill stuff. But yeah, it's just, this is part of playing. It's part of playing sport, obviously. But you're just trying to minimise the risks as much as possible. And when it does happen, you're trying to have the right system in play, the right protocols in place to make sure people recover properly, and they give an injured brain a chance to recover before they go out and batter it again. And in fairness, I think we are pretty much on the right track. We're able to pick out a few instances where you think they might have done a little better. I know in the Hurling game, I was surprised that John Egan was playing a few weeks ago and he came off concussed. I think it was John Egan in the first half, and the referee, he was down holding his head, and he was down for a good bit and holding his head, and the referee didn't call on Alan Byrne, who would be, a pretty good expert on these things. He had me up talking at an FAI thing before about it, and I'm sure he was itching to go on. The referee didn't call him on, and he only called him on a few minutes later, and John was obvious that he wasn't right, and he took a massive bang to the head. So things like that, you think, that's so obvious, that situation, that could be, sorted out. But, in the main, we're, I would feel comfortable now if a parent having a kid, or my son was playing in the Premier League now, I'd feel a lot more comfortable than I would, of the thing of maybe 20 years ago looking at someone play. And, I think that's the main aim, isn't it? That's what we're trying to do, without changing the sport, without changing a whole lot of things about it.
Yeah, you see, I wonder, will we have to change the sport? So to break it down into two broad areas, there's the bang to the head, and you've discussed there where we were and where we are now, and bar the incident like David Luiz the other night, we seem to be in a much better place when it comes to dealing with those one-off incidents where there's definitely damage of some kind. What would worry any lover of the sport is that there is a question mark, I think, still over how much damage repeated heading on the forehead or not does. In NFL studies, we hear that it's not the one-off incidents, it's the repeated whiplash effect that causes the damage. So, for instance, do you think a Premier League player in training Monday to Friday is heading the ball a lot less than back in your day when you were doing that half hour of finishing at the end?
Yeah, I would say so. Naturally, because of the style of football that is played.
More so than safety?
I'd say a bit of both. If I was playing now and I was training, without knowing, but like knowing knowing everything that is out there now, and everyone's a lot more informed, I wouldn't be staying after training to do crossing. I'd be doing the finishing, but I wouldn't be doing heading and finishing for half an hour after training, heading 20, 30 balls and trying to get that one into the bottom corner that you're waiting, and you go again till you get it exactly perfect. No, I wouldn't be doing that. And I'd imagine coaches are telling players to get off, doctors, physios who are watching and they're at every trainer saying, listen, lads, come on. If you want to do... You also, if heading's in the game, and it should be, you have to get the technique right. So you have to practice, but once you have the technique, you keep that for life. So, no, I think players just are. I would imagine they are being more sensible about it. I remember a training session where most of the training session, I won't name the manager of the team, but most of the training session was taken up of the centre halves. All the defenders had to stand on the goal line, and we got to boot balls at them as hard as possible for about 45 minutes, and they had to keep it out with their head. So like that sort of stuff is not happening now, and it shouldn't be. But again, going back to it, I would feel a lot more comfortable now. Just the style of football and the awareness everyone has. Listen, they're still going to be heading, you're still going to head the ball, but we won't have near as much repetitive. Keepers aren't rolling it and booting it 80 yards for centre halves to head clear, or strikers to head flick on like they were even 5 years ago. It's just not happening. It happens a couple of times a game now instead of every kick out or every whatever, depending on the team you played for. But no, I think it's been cut back. You're talking about NFL and repeat. There's not the same level of force going into a collision in football. And listen, it's the end of the day. All you can do is try to, within reason, make it as a risk-free, healthy sport as possible. And I think that's what they are doing. I really do. I like how much they're trying to focus on it and trying to make it aware, and how much everyone's talking about it. When we see an incident where you think, listen, where it's a topic of conversation, and it won't happen. Hopefully, it won't happen the next time. So listen, it's people's health and it's important. But it's try. All you can do is try your best, and I think everyone is.
And when you spent half an hour working on your finishing, lots of headers, would you ever walk off the pitch going, geez, a bloody headache after that? Or was it always fine?
Yeah.
You would?
I would.
Oh, yeah. Right.
This is stupid, but you just don't associate heading a ball with you just go head in the ball. Of course I have a pain in the head, and a lot more near the end of my career. And that was, again, one of the reasons I sat down especially and said, listen, whatever about the concussions, I dreaded heading the ball. In the last year of my career, I just feel like crap. I'd want to go home and sit down on the sofa and I'd be in a bad mood for the day. That was my thing. I'd lost I'd lost the whatever tolerance I had to any bang to the head was basically gone. Yeah. And it's something that I loved doing, heading the ball, became, cringe. I ended up, just, my neck, I'd like a turtleneck, my neck had disappeared into my shoulders with the thought of when the ball would be coming towards my head. So wasn't doing myself any favours.
Did you manage to duck out of that kind of finishing practice towards the end?
Yeah, I did. And, if we were in the wall in training or we're practicing whatever, I wouldn't be going near it with my head. I just, putting my hands in front of my face. And thankfully I was old enough and mature enough, I suppose the coaches would say nothing to me. But if you're a younger fella and you feel under pressure to take it, you're not a man unless you take it to the face or whatever. Yeah. I need that crap. So no, I definitely, in the last year and a half, probably maybe more, I don't know, thinking about it, and again, I looking back, I knew that, but at the time, I wasn't putting two and two together as quickly as I should have been. I suppose you're in a bit of denial, and then, thankfully now I know what I know, and the more stories about it, I forced myself to read them about dementia and everything in ex-professionals. The more I read it, I'm so delighted I did, call it a day when I did. I was 30, just turning 34. I saved myself another couple of years of
punishment.
Punishment, and what could have been, maybe the straw that broke the camel's back in my future. Hopefully that's, won't be the case. I feel great, thankfully. No problems.
I was just going to ask, because we've had rugby players in here, for instance, and they've, by necessity, where the hits are bigger, they've had to get their house in order maybe before. Football, for whatever reason, maybe football's stood a little bit too still as well. But, various rugby players would talk about the symptoms, be it ongoing headaches or big mood swings, or some days where cracking open that curtain and letting the light in is just not a good thing. So you've had none of that, thankfully, have you?
No, not since I retired. Yeah, I did definitely the mood thing when I would have finished training after, said heading the ball and everything. So I really noticed that near the end, the mood swings and just feeling, just lethargic and not right. But no, since I've retired, touch wood, so far, great.
So the mood swing would be, I want to go home and not talk to anyone type thing, or were you snappy and angry? Or
a bit snappy and tired, just sit on the sofa and not want to sort of do anything, not want to go out, not want to, I suppose, engage a whole lot. So that was something I know, but I actually became a bit aware of that. Again, another, you're told the symptoms now, and in fairness, this was in the MLS, you'd sit down and they'd talk you through the symptoms, and that's when you become aware. We'd have big meetings maybe twice a year, and at the time you're thinking, this is a pain, another 2-hour meeting here, but then you start to listen, you see that, they make it really interesting, and you really start to cop on a bit. So I'm sure that's the same in England, and what all the players are hearing and seeing, and that's what set off, I suppose, a few light bulbs with me.
Must have been.
Now feel fine.
Did your family notice the difference in you towards the end?
I don't know. My wife probably said I was always grumpy when I was playing. Listen, when you're playing sport as well, you're so up and down and winning and losing, and it's hard to tell you what was a bang to the head and what was just a defeat or whatever it might be. So no, my wife would just talk him home from training, he's in a grumpy mood from training, or he's tired from training, or whatever it might be. So no, that was the case. No, as I said, right now, again, if I get a bang to the head now, I really do notice it. The simple my 7-year-old might give me a little tap on it, a little thing, and Doyle, I do notice that now.
Right.
A lot easier than I should, but I just try to avoid anything that would cause that, and I don't try to put myself in those situations. But I still play five-a-side. I'm still when we could play five-a-side, I suppose. I still do all those things, and you have to live your life as well, and just again try to do things sensibly, and that's what players, in general, I think are doing now. And I know I'm going over myself. I think I'd be more comfortable now looking at how football is and how they're treating it. I think they're trying their best, and it'll only improve.
This is a horrible question to ask you, but I ask anyway. Where does the worry come in for you, a la at Tony Cascarino, when you see, for instance, former pros 3.5 times, this is according to a University of Glasgow brain injury group, I'm sure you're aware of all the literature, but 3.5 times more likely to suffer from dementia, 4-fold increase in motor neuron disease, 2-fold increase in Parkinson's. Do you ever fixate on that? Because Tony Cascarino really is struggling with that, you know?
I suppose I'm still, like, I'm late, I'm 37, I'm still not thinking too much.
Yeah.
I'm trying to just, you know what I do? I put it in the back of my head and I don't think about it, because what's the point? What can I do? You know? And Tony, you were saying Tony had history in his family, and that's a double worry for him, I suppose. I don't have history in my family that I know of. And, you know, again, what can I do now? It's too late to change anything. I put in the back of my head, I feel fine, and I move on. And I'll worry about it when I have time to worry about it. Maybe my wife worries about it more, you know. Maybe she has, maybe she thinks about it more than I do, but we don't talk about it. And what's the point? What can we do about it? As long as I feel happy and healthy now, and hopefully for long into the foreseeable future. And that's the way I look at it. You know, when you can't change anything, what's the point in worrying about it?
It's a very fair outlook, to be honest. Were you quick, as a matter of interest? You talked about kind of ducking out of finishing practice at the end. Were you quick to go and seek help elsewhere in that last year, or did you push it off as long as you could, or how did you handle that?
I didn't. You know, when I got that last concussion, played LA, and I'd had a few, and it was my third one of the year, and I'd been leading up to that, and, you know, I was putting 2 and 2 together, and I was just thinking it was near the end of the season. It was probably September. The MLS ends in October-ish, end of October. I was thinking, just get through the end of the season now, have a rest. Had a few concussions, have a rest. You know, and come back again in January, February, where it was for pre-season. But that concussion then, you know, was sort of like the final straw. But I didn't know it at the time. You know, it was just another bang to the head. But I went to see the usual return to play, and went to see the neurologists and all that you have to do, and sitting down and talking to them. And they went through what I'd had that season and my symptoms and what was explained to them about training and heading and everything. And he just, the fella was like, what age are you? How long have you playing? Okay, well, if I was you, I'd retire. But I didn't... you know, that didn't really sink in. I was just, yeah, okay, right, sure, I'll go home. And, you know, I was on my own with him. And I went home to my wife, and it's like, he said if he was me, he'd retire. And it's just like, was it a passing comment, or did he actually mean, like, I'd retire? It just seemed too easy for him to say it. You know, you're expecting a lot more than that. So then, yeah, I rang him back, and I was like, did you really say that? He said, yeah, I would retire if I were you. But then, obviously, I went and had all different scans and tests and a few other opinions, and it was basically the same solution. Listen, Kevin, we can't tell you to retire, can't force you to retire. If we were you, we'd retire. You know, if you can, obviously there was nothing to stop me. I felt fine. You know, end of season, I could have, you know, taken a few months off and come back, but I was tempted. I was really tempted. Ireland were going to Euros, and I was desperate to sort of see what I could do to try get in that. Or potentially going to the Euros. They didn't qualify in the end, but that was what I was hanging on for, to try and make that. And then we just sat down with my wife and discussed that, and we're like, why? Like, you know, it's the age of, if I was 28, it'd have been a different story. You know, I wouldn't have. But
would you, 28, you keep going?
Yeah, I would have. You know, I would have. Yeah, I definitely would have dragged it out. I wouldn't have owned up to as much, I suppose.
Doesn't that show we need to?
I wouldn't have come forward with enough information. I would have kept it to myself a bit.
We need to protect players from themselves, is what that highlights. Like, a 28-year-old you would have pushed on and done God knows what to yourself. You know, that shows players can't be trusted in this conversation at all.
No, definitely not. You're not. Listen, it's terrible to say that, but it's true, isn't it? You just have to go with the best medical advice you can get. Players can't. Yeah, listen, no matter, it's different if you have a tight hamstring or a tight calf. You can be trusted a little bit on that. And listen, I know my body and I can work through that. But when it comes to something you don't know a whole lot about, your own head and how that works and how that heals, you can't be trusted on it. Listen, it's too important in that situation, where it should be totally in the medical side of the club's hands to pull you out and not let you go back until they say you're ready, and not when you say you're fine. But there's a little bit of, there's only so much testing they can do, you know. There's a little bit where the player has to finally say, I feel fine, but it should be 2 or 3 weeks down the line from an incident that happens where, you know, you can pass all the tests and still feel like crap and lie about it. You know, one of the tests, well, it was anyway, one of the return to play tests is having to head the ball from 10 yards, from 15 yards, from 20 yards. And I was dreading that in one of my last ones. You know, I just don't want to head the ball here. You know, why would I want to head a ball to return from a concussion? Why do that to myself? And you head the ball, and how you feel? Yeah, I feel fine. Yeah, head that, no problem. But felt like shit after heading the ball. But you know, that's how you get back to play. So that was early on in my last season. After that pre-season concussion that I had to do that one. And, it sounds stupid. I sound stupid saying that, lying about that. Why would I lie about that? But you just want it. When you're playing and you're in that bubble of playing sport and you're a professional, you can only take so long of treatment and not playing, and you just want to be back out playing. And it's when your body's fine, your muscles are fine, you can run around. The last thing you worry about is, how your head, if you have a bit of a headache or not feeling great, that doesn't stop me running around. So, it's I don't have a definitive answer for that. Players will have to have, you can only tell, themselves at the end of the day. In instances like that, you can't force a player to tell the truth.
God, that's mad though, isn't it? That like Kevin Doyle, very intelligent, well-adjusted fella, a long way off, clued in, family at this stage, and he's coming back from concussion and he's going through his protocol and he's heading the ball and feels like crap and lies about it. Is like unbelievable in hindsight.
Yeah, it is. When I think about it now, I said it's stupid. It's not intelligent. Obviously, you said not intelligent at all.
I'll withdraw that then. I'll withdraw that.
Yeah, it's. But
it shows it's a pros attitude, and we have to factor that in when we're making some kind of rules here. I think for the game going forward, that professionals are going to be desperate. Like their whole lives are at stake here. Their whole futures are at stake here. 2-3 year contract can transform your life and your family's life, and so of course players are going to take chances. And I'm curious what you think, because you've looked into this then a little bit. So over the next 10, 20, 30, 40 years, the game is going to figure out the big incidents, very quickly. What happened on Sunday, that's going to be sorted. Like, I wonder, will there have to be, and I don't know how you decide what the right amount is, and because there's almost an element of current generations being guinea pigs as to what the right amount of heading the brain can take is, but will there have to be, you're allowed head 6 balls at this velocity, each day, Monday to Friday, and that's it. There's a cut-off point. There's a limit to what you can do. And even, I don't know scientifically if that works, because some players can probably head the ball all day and they'll be fine. Others are more susceptible to it. That's why this thing is really, really tricky for the game to figure out. And the easy option is to go, well, we're just going to ban heading. But that's obviously, that transforms the game. So I don't know how you get from your experience of heading the ball lots, which clearly was too much, to not at all. Where is that sweet spot going to be, and how long will it take football to find it?
I don't know the answer to that.
Yeah, it's really tough.
There's so much technological advancements and impact. You can have an impact sensor in a ball now to see how hard it hits someone. There's so many stats taken. There's 1,000,001 stats all the time. So I'm sure they can work it out how many times a person heads a ball. But I still think, me now, if I was playing now and I was a 21-year-old now, and I went through my career and I got to 33 or 4 like I was in the MLS, and I wouldn't feel like I did then, because I wouldn't have headed near as many balls. I wouldn't have gone through near as many. So the player now won't have the same. I don't think they'll get to 33 and have to lie about how they feel in a return to play assessment about heading the ball, because I don't think they'll have had the same impacts. They won't. It's just football now. That's true. Can you imagine me playing for Ireland 10 years ago? If I was playing for, say, Stephen Kenny last week, it was a totally different, even in that 10 years, of how many times I would have challenged in the air for a ball. I wouldn't have probably challenged once in Stephen Kenny's few games in charge. So, and that's the same in the Premier League.
You wouldn't come back and score a goal for us, would you? Just
I wouldn't have been any great shakes myself now, so I won't go there.
But on your point there, so yes, I agree with you. You mightn't have had any issues at 33, 34. Agreed. But we still don't know what, a better approach now will mean when you're 70 or 80. So I'm saying the guys right now who are heading it very little, will they still, in 50 years' time, be more susceptible to this, just by dint of heading the ball even like a couple of hundred times a year, which isn't that much, and that's the really difficult thing for the game.
Yeah, I don't know. I can't answer that. Nobody knows, do they?
No, I don't think, I'm not, off the top of my head, I'm not too sure of how you would figure that out, bar going experience.
Yeah. But then, where do you draw the line? I know it's a simple one at heading, but sort of draw the line when you, as I said, you fall on the ground and bang, you're bumping into people at corners, you're bumping into people on the pitch, you're getting impacts a lot of the time, and it wouldn't be just heading the ball. So, I suppose all you can do is do as much as common sense as possible. Yeah. And, and that's what I think is doing at the moment, without changing the game radically. And I wouldn't want to change the game radically. You know what? if I had the career I had and at 8 years of age I got dementia, I would, you know, I had a great career and a great life, and I felt great for the next 30 years and 40 years, and then at 80 you got dementia. Well, it could have been from football, or it could have been you're just going to get, it happens anyway. So it's a terrible way to look at it, or maybe it's I don't know, it's
pragmatic.
What way it is.
Pragmatic.
But it's you know, I really enjoyed my career. I still wouldn't go back and change it of what I did heading wise. I would change maybe the stupid heading in training where I did all that finishing heading, but in the games I loved playing. I loved heading the ball. I loved scoring goals with my head. I loved challenging centre halves. I loved this art of timing a run to win a flick on, you know, all those things. I enjoyed that. So, you know, I suppose it was something I was good at, and I'd hate to see it is gone out of the game anyway, naturally, just the way football is played. So you know, the little bit that's left, you know, I would imagine it's not, listen, it's better than it was, and that's all you're hoping for. The treatment is better than it was, the awareness is better than it was. People aren't doing as much stupid stuff as they were.
OTB AM.
With Gillette, your Mo supported our frontline workers this Movember.